Welcome to another episode of Chasing Labels. I am your host, Stephen Billings, and as always with me is your other host, Andrew Cabral. How you doing, man?
Doing good, Stephen. Doing good. We're back here once again for another episode of Chasing Labels. This is spine number 46. Making our way almost to the half-century mark. Feeling good.
Yeah, well, I mean, once again, you're equating episodes of this show with time.
Yes, well, I mean,
I don't know how you get. I guess your time is really slow there in Rhode Island.
My life's really slow, but yet also fast at the same time.
Okay,
it's a hell of a mind trip. Yeah. I don't know how to equate this to movies, but it feels like Inception meets 2001: A Space Odyssey.
I was gonna say maybe like meets like what's his name? Boyhood. Richard Linklater. Like Boyhood movie where
my life's lived 2 weeks per year at a time,
something like that. I don't know. But as always, we have some guests with us this week, and
we do
coming
indeed.
From across the pond. They do a lot of extras work for a lot of these Blu-rays you love, and they do a lot more. There's so much more that I couldn't fit it on our flyer that I like to advertise our guests on. So they're going to explain all that they do with us. We have Dave Wain and Matty Budrewicz. I probably messed it up. How was that?
Oh, so terrible.
Oh, man. All that rehearsal time.
Yeah, I know. All that. I said it at least 20 times before this, and I still messed it up.
We just went over this like a minute ago.
Jesus.
It's Budrewicz.
Budrewicz, yeah. Budrewicz.
Well,
damn, all that.
We knew this. I told you this was going to happen, guys.
I know.
But
it was inevitable.
You did.
It was inevitable.
Yeah, but guys, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate you guys taking the time. So how you guys doing?
We're good. Yeah, we're good. We're enjoying a spring summer evening in the UK.
Is it nice weather over there?
No,
for the UK.
I was going to say that didn't really make sense to me, feeling like what I know about the weather over there, but I was going with it. Yeah. But Matty, how are you doing?
I was okay until the very traumatic name escapade. It's really took it out of me, guys.
I'm sorry. I hope you can stay with us. I hope you're not too down after I just butchered your name. But you said you're used to it, so it shouldn't be too bad, right?
Yeah. Honestly, there'll be the Species box set's just come out now, the 88 Films one.
Yeah.
That we did a couple of commentaries for, and literally I'm just bracing myself for the the visible shock when they see the funny sounding foreign name listed on the back cover when they're trying to read out all the extras.
Yes.
So it just comes with the turf. I'm used to it.
Yeah. Well, guys, whoever wants to go first, please tell us your path, where your beginnings are, your love of film. Dave, you want to start?
Yeah, I can do. It's really quite boring, to be honest.
Well, that's fine. Boring's fine.
I didn't really watch films as a kid. I missed out the whole coming of age thing. Parents weren't really into them. And I just missed out on the whole Star Wars, Indiana Jones, that rites of passage that you get for anyone that's sort of roughly between, 35 and 45. Just missed that completely. But then I think the epiphany came when my family bought a video shop, and it sort of coincided with summer holidays. So I was not doing much, and then came down to my living room one day to find a couple of hundred VHS cassettes in the house, ready to be stocked in this soon to be open video shop, and I just sort of started to plough through them, and it was just a really obscure range of sort of late 90s direct-to-video films that really just blew me away, and sort of from there I've kind of sort of tended to avoid anything remotely mainstream and just sort of have an ongoing love affair with the obscurities and the oddities and sort of the orphaned children of the film industry. Really, that's the kind of stuff that turns me on. So yeah, not a conventional path. In terms of film loving, but yeah.
And what's the name of the video store? And you're still running a video store.
I am
Dave.
sat in a video store right this very second.
Yes.
Because it's quite quiet and it's better than recording at home where my dog might bark. So yeah, it's called Snips Movies, and it's the second to last remaining store in the UK.
Wow.
No pressure.
You guys are like the Blockbuster of us.
Yes, but still trading.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have 14,000 films from
nice.
From 1915 through to the present day. We're just trying to introduce something new, but it's difficult. It's getting harder and harder. You're trying to entice people into leaving their house, which isn't an easy thing, especially with all kind of the lure of the streaming services these days and what they have to offer. But it's getting an expensive game. Netflix have just recently upped their prices. I'm sure Disney will follow suit next year.
And Amazon just did. They just
and it's a lot of money. And I don't know how America's faring with the cost of living crisis, but in this country there's a really big pinch on at the moment. So
yeah, it's very bad here as well. I think
Right.
it's bad everywhere.
Right. So I think a lot of people will be having to sort of make tough decisions with regard to which streaming services to keep. And I think sort of the idea of that around the corner from their house is a place with 14,000 films that you can rent a movie for, say, $3 might be quite appealing.
Yeah. I agree with you. And maybe they'll even think also, hey, if I buy this, I'll never have to pay for it again. There's also that too, which of course is what this show's all about. And
Sure.
Yeah. And so Matty, please tell us also where you began.
Probably much more conventionally than Dave did. I was the earliest things I can remember is watching movies on TV. Well, but more precisely, watching movies that my dad taped from TV. Things like RoboCop, The Terminator, Beetlejuice, and I just, from a very, very early age, just absolutely in love with just watching whatever it was that my dad decided to tape. I came from a very liberal household in that sense, as long as it wasn't wall-to-wall sex, for example. I wasn't watching stuff like Basic Instinct or Crash until I was much, much older and seeking that out of my own accord. But generally action films, horror films, thrillers, just a lot of stuff that used to be shown on the BBC, ITV, Channel 4, and then around about 97 time when we got Channel 5. That's really when my tastes became what they are, when I started really gravitating towards like more, the kind of cheaper, low budget, even more genre-y end, because that Channel 5 was the network who was showing like all the B-movie horror films and stuff like that when they first started, and that just, they're what captured my imagination. And then just as a teenager, just prowling around like charity shops and thrift stores and car boot sales and stuff, just trying to accrue a movie collection. And it was just I think a lot of it as well was the kids I was hanging around with at the time at school. My mate Johnny, he was called. He was a massive horror nut, and I remember him lending me a copy of Hellraiser, which I'd always like. The artwork just used to. You'd go into like Blockbuster or the local news agents where they'd have this stack. These shelves and shelves of all these wild-looking movies, particularly the horror and sci-fi and action, and Hellraiser always like caught my eye. And then I can remember when Johnny lent me it on tape. It blew my mind, and that was it. I was about 13 years old, and that's when I decided I want to be the movie guy. That's going to be my thing. I want to obsess over films. So I just used to prowl around charity shops and stuff, just trying to accrue like a video collection. And then DVD was like, it just got to the stage of DVD becoming, pocket money prices, where you could get things for like £5 or £6, and just trying to build a collection just purely because I was just fascinated by genre material.
Yeah, and so when did you guys meet? You and Dave start to meet?
Yeah, well, I think we met really over common interest, really. We met by generally disliking the same people.
That's how you do it, yes.
Yeah, and just sort of, in the depths of the internet, just sort of like deciding to us. So we were both starting out with regard to writing about a decade ago, and we were both writing for an absolutely horrific website that had all their ideas were just so wrong, and we just sort of found common areas. We had common areas in film as well. We both liked people like J.R. Bookwalter and David Okoto, Fred Olen Ray, Jim Wynorski, Matty especially, and we just found common interests. So yeah, it's about a decade ago, and yeah, we just started writing for, as I say, a really poor website, and then we just thought, well, hang on, we might be able to do something better if we go our own separate ways.
Yeah.
And
I think that idea came though after, I think the initial plan, we were trying to organise a coup to take the website to try and take the website over at one point, if memory serves. But and then we just decided to go our own way, I guess, and we sort of we flirted, I guess, with the mainstream a little bit. I can remember us trying to get into like Fangoria and stuff like that, because obviously at the time we were just very horror. That's what we were aiming for. Just let's write about horror movies. And then I think we did a bit with like Scream magazine and stuff like that, and that didn't work out. And then a guy called Colin McCracken, a friend of ours, he was sort of giving up with his own website, Zombie Hamster, and it was a great site. Like we both read it like religiously and stuff, and one day got a message off Colin out the blue saying, look, I'm moving away from Zombie Hamster for a while, but I don't want to give up the domain. Do you guys want to run it? And we just were like, yeah, fucking right, we do, absolutely, we want to write for Zombie Hamster. And then it just went from there. We got rid of a lot of the horror stuff pretty quickly, when it sort of became obvious that a lot of other people were writing just about new released horror movies, and it was cool. It was class writing about all like the Blu-rays that companies that we'd go on to work for were like pumping out and stuff, and doing write-ups on them and stuff, and that was really cool. But then it was when we decided to, it was B movies and direct-to-video films. That's where our interests really sort of laid. So we started trying to make the website more about that and stuff, which ultimately, long story short, that's what led to our current home at the schlockpit.com.
Yeah. So please tell us about the Schlock Pit, because you guys, you got so much going on. Whether information on your many audio commentaries, and then of course the podcast you do. Please tell us more about that.
Yeah, well, we had the idea for a book, probably about 5 or 6 years ago, because we realised that. Both being sort of aficionados of the 90s, and especially the direct-to-video stuff, we thought, there's no... You've got to remember that back in the 90s, film companies were making movies for a cottage industry. They were making movies just to serve the video shops, just to quench their thirst. Video shops at the time were more popular than ever, raking in money, and they needed movies. They needed content. Just like Netflix do now, and Apple, and etc. So movies were being churned out by studios and independent production houses into video stores, 10, 15 new movies a week, and there were thousands of them. And all of a sudden, come 97, 98, 99, DVD arrived. And everyone thought, it's okay, don't worry about all these films that are already from the 90s that are on VHS. Don't worry about that. They're all going to come out on DVD. And so everyone kind of, relax, that's fine, they'll come out on DVD. But they didn't. So now, 20 years later, we're left with a situation where there are a few thousand films that came out in the 90s that have never found a home beyond VHS. And that's a scary thing. We're talking about lost art here. And you can say, well, maybe the reason they're not out is because they're not very good. But that's a lie, because some of them are absolutely fantastic. So we thought, well let's have this like a home, like a safe place, where we can write about these films that just have disappeared from the public eye completely. If you're on social media, one of the most regular sayings that people will have is, no one talks about this movie anymore, and it'll be something incredibly common, like Halloween 3 or something like that. But
Knew that was
these,
coming.
Yeah, I think you've heard that line a few times before. Yeah, but here, these films that we write about, we have 3 new articles every week, 180 articles a year. These 180 films, literally, they're not covered in movie circles, on film Twitter hashtag, and it's a frightening thing, So we try and do an analytical essay on each one of these films, covering, speaking to the creator, speaking to the director, producer, writer, whoever we can chat to. We had a new essay go up tonight, which covers 2 comedies from 91 and 92, Virgin High and Hot on Joe Collar, and we spoke to the writer-director Richard Gabai. So we're telling stories that have never been told before, and it's really important for us to preserve them. I mean, I know a lot of the companies that you probably adore, a lot of these film companies, these boutique labels, a lot of these companies you will love because they're preserving films. And this, to us, this is like us preserving films.
Yeah, this is our version.
We're making sure they're not forgotten. Yeah, sorry, go on, Matt.
It's as well. There was a real, I guess from a more cynical point of view, that what we noticed as well, that there was a real gap in the market for what we saw as like, as highfalutin as it might sound, intelligent criticism of these genre movies and stuff. You'd read websites called like I don't know, like crapmoviefest.com and stuff, and it was just basically like them doing this whole mystery science theatre kind of shtick with these movies that we actually genuinely care a great deal about. And we're not saying that every film we watch on there is an undiscovered gem, because my God, there are some absolute clunkers out there,
of course.
But there is a lot of stuff on there that deserves a better write-up than just some guy in his basement doing a stand-up comedy routine based around a film which has cyborgs and boobies in it. And that used to really, that was something that really annoys me, and still does to this day, where you still have people doing that sort of comedic shtick, and we tried to, again, as lofty as it sounds, we wanted to do a sort of like, the sight and sound of B-movies and direct-to-video films, something that could maybe one day serve as like a kind of resource, like how Psychotronic video used to, and stuff, like things like that. So that was like a big influence to us, just trying to write about these films seriously and analytically and provide some sort of context, because like Dave said, it won't be too long before the entire histories of these films are forgotten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was real quick, Andrew. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I know I told you to jump in, but I believe one interesting thing you said real quick before I forget, the thing where you said they were making a lot of movies for the VHS era, which I think is an interesting contrast to like when we talk about like the drive-in era, where they were making a lot of films for drive-ins. They were making a lot of films for straight to video, and they still really do that a lot too as well. And then also, when it comes to, covering these films, and not liking how they're being made fun of in a way, I think Brad Henderson from Vinegar Syndrome had a very similar take.
He did.
Yeah,
I was just thinking of that.
Yeah, he was talking about how he wasn't a big fan of Mystery Science Theater and didn't like how everything was kind of like pushed towards this way of thinking these movies didn't have anything to give, that they were kind of, there was
that they're just there to make fun of.
Yeah.
And some of them are, like you said, true, direct awful films. What I would like to know is, when it comes to, I guess, relating it back to our podcast, this idea of movie collecting and curation and all that stuff. Where did that was that an early part of? I know you said that movies weren't really an early part of your life. When did movie collecting could become a part of both of your lives?
For me, it was just it comes with the job, maintaining this 14,000 title video library or DVD and Blu-ray library. It comes with the job, but I think it's the pull for me for collecting. If I'm looking at the next month's releases, I'm attracted to films from companies that are putting out more diverse and obscure stuff. Maybe AGFA maybe Vinegar Syndrome, maybe Culture Shock, 88, obviously. So while I collect a degree of Criterion and Arrow, obviously, they're the things that turn me on, maybe less so than the really wild stuff, I would say, because it's just whatever's in our wheelhouse, really. But yeah, I don't know how Matty differs from that.
I think my original desire was just to see every horror film ever made. That was my big goal as a teenager. I started with all like the relatively mainstream stuff like Hellraiser, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and before long, you're mainlining Full Moon and things like that, and getting into the really more esoteric stuff. And then, like, everything seems to link back to the stuff that, like, I watched as a kid. Like Beetlejuice, I think, directly impacted my love of horror, particularly like over-the-top, almost campy horror. The Terminator and RoboCop, really, I was so in love with those movies as a kid, still am to this day, and I think that's why I have such a fetish for any film involving a robot. Like, I just absolutely love them. And yeah, I just fell in love with the idea of, like, buying them was a way to keep watching them again, because I love watching the same thing over and over. I'm very much a creature of habit, and I like to have the best version of it and
yes.
stuff. Like, the only reason I ever bought VHS back in the day was because when I started collecting at the age of 13, 14, people were selling them off so cheaply because DVD had come in. That, it's what I could afford. And then if I could afford the DVD or, a better version of it, I'd fork out for it if I liked the movie enough. But yeah, I guess it's just this desire just to own the films that you like, and even a lot of the time the films that you don't like.
But also in terms of collecting, I think there's an evolution to it. I think when you start off, you're collecting because it's new and it's exciting and you want to watch as much as you can possibly watch. But I think my collecting habits have changed in the last 4 or 5 years, because more and more regularly I'm seeing stuff go out of print. And that's not necessarily on Blu-ray, that's on DVD as well. I know it's not cool to like DVD, but there are so many films out on DVD that are now becoming incredibly hard to find, that stand very little chance of ever getting a Blu-ray. So I think, certainly the last few years, I've tried to collect as many DVDs as possible, because they might not show up on streaming sites in years to come, and they might not be upgraded to Blu-ray. So it's a scary kind of crossroads where you've got to say to yourself, well, yeah, there I am, well, not me, but there people are at home with the greatest, audio and visual setup that the planet has ever seen, and we're buying DVDs, which is kind of like, still buying VHS in the era of DVD. I don't know, but it's just, we need to it's preservation again, because,
it really is.
You don't know what's going to happen in the next few years in regards to the physical media market.
Don't.
I couldn't sleep at night if I ever woke up and I couldn't see, I don't know, David Dakota's The Brotherhood 4 or something, because, I'd got rid of the VHS, the DVD.
Yeah. Like, it's awesome. Do not get me wrong. I love the fact that I can turn Amazon Prime and Tubi on and I can watch Fred Olden Ray's Cyberzone. I love that. I love the fact that film is on there. However, I also take great comfort in the fact that I've got the damn thing on DVD as well, because there will come a time where it will be pulled from both of those platforms, and I want to know that I can watch that film whenever I want. And so I buy a lot of DVDs too. It's constantly trawling the second-hand markets on eBay and stuff like that to try and buy things to plug the gaps. Of course, if it came out on Blu-ray, I'd be first in line to buy it.
Of course.
Absolutely. But at the same time, as Dave said, a lot of these movies, the chances are, when only a poor VHS master exists of it, what are the chances of it ever coming to disc?
Yeah, and when it comes to discs, you guys have obviously contributed a ton. We have alluded to it before, but I know you've done a lot of written essays, and also done many audio commentaries. Talk about how you guys got hooked up with I know you've done a lot of stuff with 88 Films.
Yeah.
So tell us about how your relationship started with them.
Yeah, these things happen in the most fortuitous of ways. I actually wrote a very slanderous article.
He tore them a new one online on our old website, Zombie Hamster. He absolutely
just goes to show you.
eviscerated. I think
That's how you get a job.
People like honesty. They don't like yes men.
No, that's true. People do like brutal honesty. I wrote. I'm so embarrassed about it. I'm so glad the website's dead now, so people can't read it.
I'll find it on archive and put it on the Schlock. I'll fish it out.
Anyway,
I've still got the article.
Yeah. I wrote just a horrifically awful, slanderous, litigious article about 88 to say that they were benefiting financially from a crowdfunder. They had a crowdfunder, and I made the allegation that they were benefiting financially and they were pocketing the money in order to do whatever. Because I had a concrete cast iron tip off. I still got the original email from someone that was working for them that said, no, this is what they're doing. Then this money isn't going towards restoring these films. This money is going to X, Y, and Z. There's going to be no extras. There's going to be none of this. This is a travesty. You need to write something. You need to put it out in the public. The public need to know about this thing. So I'm like,
he was
okay.
like a B-movie Deep Throat at this point. He was becoming very, very serious about being some sort of boutique label whistleblower.
Oh yeah. So anyway, because I trusted this source, and because he worked for 88, I thought, right, okay, well there must be some truth in this. So I wrote it, and it was completely wrong. It was so off the mark. Why they didn't sue me, I don't know. But they didn't sue. Instead, they invited me for a drink. Which was great. So we went out for a few beers, and we got talking, and we made friends. And since then, we've just had this great relationship for 6 years, and we just signed up for our 20th commentary for them.
Wow, that's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, it's been good. Yeah, we've got a lot of freedom, which is rare. I mean, we love doing stuff for Arrow Video and all the other companies we work for as well. But with 88, we have an immense amount of freedom to do really whatever we want. It's like for this latest batch of releases that haven't been announced yet. They gave us the list of releases for the rest of the year, and they said, just go through it and see what you fancy.
Yeah, pick whatever you want, basically.
So we did. I mean, that's just a level of trust and sort of. We're honoured to have that. I mean, it's such a great relationship. They're always good. They always pay us on time.
Nice.
And it's a good relationship. So it started in such a strange way. But since then, we've been able to do a number of things. We've been able to acquire films for them. We signed a couple of films like Gary Graver's Moon and Scorpio, which they probably regret agreeing to.
We don't care though. We got a special edition of Moon in Scorpio. We were literally like the two people on the planet excited about that. So.
Yeah, we did a feature-length documentary for them for Jean-Claude Van Damme's Replicant, and we're like, can we go and do this documentary on this cinematographer? And like, yeah, go and do that. Well, kind of, we need to pay for it. Yeah. How much do you need? And that was it. And then we've done other stuff like, when we did what was that film that we did? The Van Damme one, where we got the guy, the writer, Sheldon Lettich.
Legionnaire.
Yeah. We said, can we get Sheldon Lettich to do this, to do a director's commentary? And they said, yeah, just go and ask. So we did, and we taped that and recorded. Then for Urban Legend, I think was probably one of the most enjoyable nights of our life, where we were able to moderate the commentary for Urban Legend,
Bloody Mary,
with the director Mary Lambert, who's one of our heroes. And that was just terrific to sort of set that up and get that recorded. So yeah, we've been very, very lucky. Yeah.
And it's funny. Michael McKenzie, who's a producer for Arrow, had a very similar story about him jumping into Arrow, where I think he wrote like an article or he had done something very similar where he'd kind of said something negative towards Arrow Video, and then they let him in too, and he was like, I don't know how they let me in.
I know.
But can I just interject there? Ironically, I also wrote I reviewed 25 or 30 101 film releases over the course of 3 years. And I reviewed one of them. I gave a bad review to one of them, and they wrote to Matty. I don't know why they picked Matty. They wrote to Matty. And
I know why they picked me.
They said, I said, I don't know who your friend is, but can you tell him to stop writing bad reviews? Because, we're a small company, we're trying to survive. And they blocked us from all social media, and we haven't been able to contact them ever since. So it can go both ways.
Yeah,
But,
I was going to say, but the thing is you have to be honest, because it's not only for your own, for you as having integrity. You want your opinion to be trusted. It's also for the consumers, purpose. You don't want them buying things that ain't up to snuff. And I think people that really care about putting out a good product are going to be okay with stuff like that. You want people, like you said, to be honest and tell us where there's problems, and hopefully they'll correct in future. Because we got too many people that are too hard, that have their feelings hurt too easily these days. And so it's good to hear you guys are really sticking true to your guns about your opinions about things, because that's how we feel in here. Sometimes when we have some releases that don't look like they're up to snuff, or we've seen a movie that we don't particularly like, we'll make sure we say that we don't care much for it.
Yeah. I mean, we're film critics / historians first and foremost. That's how I see the pair of us anyway. And if within that arena, you are nothing if you don't have integrity. I don't think all the critics that I love, like Mark Kermode, Kim Newman, people like that, they're completely, everything they write down is so honest, and for a fact that what they would write on paper is what they'd say to the filmmakers themselves. And that's an ethos that we've really tried to have. And like back in the day when we were reviewing Blu-rays and stuff, we were looking at films like have you ever seen Split Second, the Rutger Hauer film and stuff? No. Oh, it's awesome.
No.
It's awesome. You need to find that. MVD, and strangely enough, 101 Films, when they actually reissued it as the special edition, they did a bang-up job with it. But the first disc that they put out there, it was the transfer, the sound mix was garbage. It looked like someone had poured bleach on the screen, and it was just awful. It had been sourced from that mad fella from DigiDreams over in Germany. I can't think. Krekel, that's him, yes, where he was, back in the day, 2013 time, where he was doing all these heavily DNR'd transfers and stuff. And they just sourced this transfer straight from it, and it looked garbage. And, like, as a fan of the movie, like, just because certain labels would send out free screener copies to people, that doesn't, that is what cheapens film criticism. If you are taking a freebie and then giving a positive review as a backhanded thank you for it, like, you got to be honest with that stuff. And I certainly wouldn't want my name on a review of a movie that I love on an inferior product. I don't want to promote a poor product and have and be tagged with that.
Exactly, I agree.
Yeah. Well, it's important because we own our website. We only take the commentary jobs that we really want to do. We're not these sort of like rogue people that just want to get our names onto anything just because we can. It's just we've got a certain professionalism, I think, and because we're completely independent, because we haven't got an editor, we haven't got anyone looking over us. I think it gives a bit more credibility, maybe.
Yeah.
Then I know you can get a lot of people. I mean, there's a lot of amazing people doing audio commentaries.
It's an absolute boom period for the critical commentary. There's some incredible talent out there, and yeah. Well, when we talk to Kat Ellinger, she's very much independent, and
yes,
she does she's fantastic always, and just lovely to talk to. And we she finds, I mean, her being a woman, it's like kind of a man's. This apparently is a man's game, apparently, and
Absolutely.
she's having a hard time getting in there sometimes.
Completely, yeah.
And
what she's done is incredible.
Absolutely,
her volume, the body of work that she's accrued, and it's and obviously more than numbers in terms of the quality that she has. It's remarkable. I think it's always something special when there's a commentary by her, I think, or like an essay and things like that. And she's good on her for carving her own niche. It's incredible.
She's a big inspiration because, back as little as 6 or 7 years ago, a lot of the audio commentaries you're listening to were academics, or they were very much what we call the BFI group of people, the British film industry, where it was very much sort of in a lofty,
a very scholarly, dry,
absolutely. And so for her to make it in the way she has is quite phenomenal. You've heard Matty's broad regional accent, and she's got a broad regional accent too. And it was almost unthinkable of people like Matty and Kat doing commentaries a few years ago, because it was a very much London-centric thing. So to hear so much diversity in terms of accents, British accents, obviously, it is fantastic.
Yeah, and so when it comes to commentaries, what is your process? How do you, she talked about how she kind of like bullet points it out and like watches it many times, and like, is that something similar to what you guys do, or?
We pour a big glass of beer and press record.
That's it? Just one time?
No script.
No
script here.
No, we tend to spend the first few days like panicking. Like thinking, I think there's maybe been about 3 where we've been like, obviously, like I remember when Dave messaged and said that, I've just put our name forward for, we're talking to our producer over at Arrow, and he said, I've put our name forward for a film that you love, and I was like, oh, go on, what is it? What is it? And it's The Mangler, and I was like, oh no fucking way, that's great. Like I love The Mangler. That is like literally. I adore that movie, and I will not hear a bad word against it. And so that was probably maybe one of 2 where I didn't have this onset of absolute horror at the thought of recording it. Because after the initial excitement of, yes, we've got the job, it's like, oh no, how the fuck do we go about talking about this thing? And trying to work out the narrative of it, I guess, because we really... The big thing for us is we try and make it as we want you to be there with us. We don't want to be seen as like we're talking down to you or anything like that. We want you. We're in the room. We want it to be like you're watching this film with 2 mates, and they're just giving you little asides about the film's production as you're going on, and little opinions and things like that, and just trying to enrich your viewing experience as if you were there with us.
Yeah, I think in time it tends to be a 3-week process. So, first things we'll do is set up kind of what movies we need to go to in order to sort of form the research of influences, themes, that director's work, maybe the lead actor's work, maybe the writer's work. So we'll put a pool of about 20 to 25 movies together that we need to consume within the next 3 weeks. And over that period, we'll have ideas of directions we can go during the commentary, maybe aspects to discuss. We'll obviously find out a lot of the history about the film, and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's around about a 3-week process, ideally. Any more than that, and you just tend to be too sort of. It's too much. You don't want to get too in your head with facts.
It tends to get to a point. I always think I know that we're ready to record when I'm pig sick of the movie. Like, I'm sick of watching it. I am sick of reading articles about it. I'm sick of poring over magazines. I'm sick of looking at stacks and stacks of notes. And that usually happens maybe 3 to 4 days before we're ready to record. Mm-hmm. But it's quite intense. And like what always gets me is you tend to get this, or at least I do. I get this sort of little post-project depression afterwards, where I feel really, because you spend 3 weeks in the company of, say, I don't know, Universal Soldier: The Return. You're watching it constantly. You're reading everything you can about it. You're spotting different things every time you watch it and making a note of time codes and that, and obsessing over, right, when this bit comes in, I need to say this bit at this time because this is the information that pertains to that particular sequence. And then all of a sudden, the second you finish recording, that's it. It's over. And, like, I just feel really down and really, like, melancholic about the whole experience. And you end up sort of, like, as if you've lost a loved one.
It is. It's like giving a child away to an orphanage.
It's bizarre. It's such a strange feeling. This, like, this post-creativity depression. I can't imagine how tough it must be for an actual fucking filmmaker giving their movie away.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like, if I feel that like that talking over someone else's frigging movie, God knows how, all these directors feel once they've handed in their director's cut.
Yeah, and you know, if they're not heavily involved in the past editing, you know, it's like once it starts going into the machine of marketing, it's like, God damn, like, how are they going to show this movie off to the rest, you know?
Yeah, well, we know that, you know, certain movies take years to create, you know, from, you know, just the gestation of it all the way up until it's out in cinema or wherever. It's just an incredible amount of time. And I think that's why, you know, you guys mentioned film criticism earlier. You know, there's been a lot of backlash when it comes to film criticism and stuff like that over recent times. But I think that, you know, the idea is that you have to have somebody to somewhat be analytical when it comes to these movies, but also understand that this is, you know, several years of someone's life being put into something. For the most part, you know, some movies are made in much shorter amount of times, but, you know, a lot of directors, a lot of filmmakers take years to do this, and then, you know, it comes out and everyone trashes it. And it's like, that's why I think, you know, in more modern times, I think we're more aware of what goes into filmmaking now more than ever. I think if there's one thing when it comes to the internet age has been information, and it's just, you know, there's a lot that goes into it. So I always feel a little more forgiving when it comes to quote unquote bad movies and, you know, their issues. But what I also wanted to ask was, when it comes to the, you know, the direct to home video kind of spotlights that you do, or just kind of unearthing a lot of these, you know, hidden gems or hidden films, how difficult, or what's the process like in terms of finding a way to watch a lot of these? Do you hunt down the actual VHS copies or DVD copies or whatever exists?
Yes, that's the ultimate. There's a few circumstances where we have had to, like, bend the rules, you know, where there is, like, you know, maybe you can only get, like, a VHS rip on a torrent stream from some crappy video copy over in Brazil or something like that, you know. But there is always, we try and get, like, a physical copy as much as possible, purely because we're collectors ourselves. And, you know, I couldn't live with myself knowing that, like, a copy of, I don't know, Plughead Rewired Circuitry Man 2 has gone to landfill somewhere. So we do try and buy stuff as much as possible.
And also, do when these movies, because I know a lot of the films that we cover here, when it comes to Vinegar Syndrome, Severin, a lot of those companies here, some of those movies are going from VHS to Blu-ray, and some of them are going from, like, VHS to 4K. Do you notice just the radical difference when it comes to the quality of a lot of these hidden gems once they're, you know, unearthed, once they're, like, cleaned up?
Absolutely.
Because I always comment that it's like it's miracle work. It really is.
I mean, I think you'd have to be blind not to see the upscaling in quality of these things. And a lot of the time, like, you know, to go back to the film Dave name dropped earlier, Moon in Scorpio, we watched that on, like, a crappy VHS when we started, like, prepping it. That's what we revisited it on when we started prepping our commentary for it, sorry. And then to actually, when we got sent the HD scan of it, it's a revelation. It just restores so much of the film's artfulness and stuff. It's like it absolutely does my head in, where when you go on IMDb and you see, oh, you can see the boom mic dropping into this. It's like, of course you can. They've taken the fucking matte bars off. Of course you're going to see the boom mic fall in, because you weren't meant to see. It's an open matte presentation, but, you know, to actually see these films, like, restored and looking as they're made, because very, very few filmmakers actually shot their films for free in the 90s. Fred Olen Ray and Jim Wynorski shot all their films in widescreen, because while they went direct-to-video over here and over with you guys in the US, a lot of the times in Germany, they'd occasionally play in theatres. In Japan, they'd play in theatres. In India, they'd play in theatres. So they always shot widescreen on the off chance it was going to get a theatrical release somewhere. So it's great being able to see them in that quality. And again, it just restores the artfulness of them. Like watching, Haunting Fear, the Fred Ray movie. The Blu-ray of that is absolutely outstanding. The film just looks gorgeous. You know, and you compare it to the VHS, which was just murky and ugly as hell. This thing is an absolute eye popper. You know, you need to get the Retromedia disc if you don't have it. It's marvellous. So yeah, it's very exciting as well seeing films like that, and it really fires me up to see that someone has put so much time and effort into restoring these things and that they care about it as much as you do. You know, because I think a lot of the time, like, us film fans, we kind of live in a vacuum where, especially when it comes to, like, kind of off the beaten path movies, you kind of think that you're the only person who's maybe seen them.
Yeah, I was thinking the exact same thing. It's like, you guys are a great example of people that obviously love a very niche genre, and some people might not think that there's anybody else that likes this stuff. But there is, obviously.
Yeah, and like, that's, you know, again, that's how me and Dave met. It was like, oh my God, you like J.R. Bookwalter's films too? And it was like, I'd never met anyone who'd voiced that in public, you know, and it was really incredible. And so it's nice to know other people just ultimately give a shit about them.
We see stats come in from our website, the Schlock Pit, every night, and some nights you just have to sit there with your mouth, with your jaw on the floor, because you can't believe how many people are visiting, reading a specific article about the most obscure film that you would think no one would ever really care about, but they do. There are a lot of people who were either buying, renting, or maybe watching these films on a repeat on an obscure movie channel throughout the 90s and noughties, that have suddenly been faced with, you know, a part of their childhood or a part of their adolescence. And so for them to read about, you know, how it was made and what were the background, what were the context, why was it made, I think yeah, it's pretty cool, because, you know, you do get, there's a lot of sameness. I know Matty touched on it earlier. You go to most websites around the cover, just mainstream films. Let's take horror, for example, and it is a lot of sameness. You couldn't identify any specific website if you didn't have the title in your address bar. You know, they're pretty much carbon copies of each other. There's no real expression. There's no real individuals anymore. I know I don't like to get all sort of, you know, nostalgic. I hate the word, but, you know, it's not like it used to be. But it isn't, because, you know, the identity, the different people who are championing certain films have kind of died away, and there's no one really coming forward. I wish there was. I wish there was people like us that were writing about the same kinds of film as us, because it'd be brilliant.
I don't. It'd absolutely decrease our traffic.
And you may not want to wish that.
my competitive side, it'd mean I'd have to try and blow them out the water. I'd get all high fidelity on their ass. So.
Well, I mean, we're in a culture, unfortunately, that seems to it seems to push sameness more than difference being different. Yeah. You know, it's like, to me, growing up, I used to celebrate the fact that I was different. Like, I know some people struggle with that. You know, they struggle with not feeling like they fit in, but not fitting in was okay with me growing up. I just felt like I just liked other things, and it didn't really bother me. And some, but, you know, and it seems to be the culture nowadays, is just everybody wants to fit in with each other, and I think it's okay to not fit in. You know, if you're not okay with yourself and the things you like, then you're going to be struggling your whole life. You know,
I echo what you just said completely, because you know, it sounds like we had a very similar upbringing in that, you know, I didn't fit in at all, but I was very, very happy with that. But I didn't have an issue. But unfortunately, a lot of people have confidence issues, and it just, you know, it makes them feel a lot more like part of a group when they like similar things, which is great. And if it makes them feel good, then, you know, that's all that matters. But I think, you know, not giving a shit about what anyone thinks is a very, very cool attribute to have.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that really, one of the many things that continues to rankle me about, like, anyone who sort of swirls around the B movies and the direct-to-video films is like like in hindsight, we probably wouldn't have called the website the schlockpit.com, because there's been a few times where it's kind of, not all the time, but it's kind of gave the wrong impression where when we've reached out to a filmmaker, they think that we're going to roast them, basically.
Yeah.
And but it's like, no, we called it that. It's like a reclamation effort, which we're trying to like take it back and like show solidarity that, it's not schlock to us. We're using the name ironically, but obviously on first glance, it just comes across as, oh, these guys are going to rip the piss out of me again. Which we don't. We try and steer away from snark as much as humanly possible. And one thing that really, really rankles me is the idea of people having to sort of frame their taste by calling it, oh, this is my guilty pleasure, or this is good for a B movie, or this is a schlocky treat, or this is just absolute bobbins, it's wonderful bobbins, and just those sort of meaningless buzz terms to try and like, oh yeah, I like this movie, but I know it's kind of shitty. Like, just own it, man. Just take pride in your tastes. Just like, why do you care if someone thinks you're an idiot for liking this film?
Yeah, there's always a caveat. There's always a caveat that they need to protect their integrity, they need to protect their coolness, they need to protect their place in the mainstream by sort of adding that caveat. Oh no, I don't really like it, but I'm just watching it because it's shit.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm guilty of that. I've done that before.
You bastard.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm not gonna lie. I'm not gonna lie. But honestly, it's something I think how you feel about, and it's definitely changed for me the more I've started to broaden my horizons. Jumping out to different, because like when we started doing this podcast, I was really starting to get into films from Severin and films from Vinegar Syndrome, and they've opened my eyes up to a lot of other stuff, and through that I've started to garnish a lot more affinity for that stuff, and recognizing that the stuff is not necessarily on the same level as how I feel about something something from like a higher end filmmaker, like a Truffaut or something. Like, it's not the same type of movie, but it doesn't mean that type of film isn't good for, like, it isn't doing what it's doing and doing it well. And that's where I think, I totally agree with you. Like, I think we all need to take a step back and stop looking at films like they need to hit some kind of bar, and that that the bar is only what you make it. It's your taste. If you think, the masturbating gunman is as good as, Jaws, then that's fine. That's fine. I mean, it doesn't matter. Yep. It's whatever.
I mean, even we wouldn't be that insane to declare.
Okay, look. I'm trying to relate here.
I know what you're saying, Stephen.
Yeah,
I've come up with that same type of mindset. It's idea that you can't compare two wildly different movies together when you're trying to be talking about quality. You can't you can't do that because it's not fair, and because movies are so subjective and I think more wide open in terms of interpretations and what movies are going for, and just the art of cinema is so vast in terms of not only quality, but what it actually is or is intended to be. You can't expect everything to be the same.
Well, it all comes down to us. Like we as people have to be more open to liking other things. I mean, that's what it all comes down to.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of John Waters. Yeah. And I know John Waters just had his birthday recently. 76 years old. Hopefully he lives forever. There's one person I want to live forever. I want it to be him.
That was my birthday too.
Oh, nice. Happy birthday.
I share a birthday. Oh, I wasn't fishing. I just found it funny, but I share my birthday with three of my heroes: John Waters, Jack Nicholson, and Dukey Flyswatter from Haunted Garage. So,
well, you guys need to, you need to get together.
Yeah, you need to collaborate.
We do before Jack shuffles off the mortal coil to a fella.
But as I was saying, it's like I love the films of John Waters, and he openly admits about all of their flaws in those movies, and it's just like, but at the time in which it was made, it was just wildly not inventive, but just experimental, and I mean, and I think the legacy of his films and his films like that are just a part of cinematic history. So they're in it. You kind of have to kind of appreciate that it exists and to take it for what it is and not to analyze it saying, oh, the editing is bad, the cinematography is bad, the acting, the dialogue. It's like the cinema's more than that.
Well, I was going to say, cinema is not only just about what technical things are about it, whether the script's great or acting's great. It's about how it makes you feel. And even what, quote unquote bad things can make you feel good. And that's that's where you have to take that into consideration when you're saying whether you like something or not.
The worst crime a movie can be, as far as me and Dave are concerned, is it can be anything, right? It can be poorly shot. It can sound like crap. It can, I don't know, be really all over the place in terms of tone. It can have bad acting, bad direction, but whatever you do, I can forgive anything just as long as you are not boring. Just do not be boring. Just entertain me at some level.
And that can even be just intellectually. Like if it's just, it could be like a slow, it could be one of these Tarkovsky films that are like super long, super slow.
Yeah, like length doesn't equate to boredom, which sounds far more rude than I thought it would when that sentence came into my head. But it's. I don't mean boring. I mean I do.
No, I know what you mean.
Full disclosure, I am a bit of a. I see the runtime for something, and if it exceeds 95 minutes, I'm like, it takes a lot to sort of psych me up. I know that. I'm going to have to put aside a fair chunk of my evening and have a toilet break before the film in order to really savour this one. But I am not averse to long movies, and I can handle slow burning films. But there's a difference between a slow burn and a boring film.
Yeah, definitely. And but before wrapping up the interview portion here, you told me when I was talking with you, Dave, that you had a book you guys were working on, and I think you might have alluded to it earlier. But please, if there's anything you can say about that.
Yeah. Well, how long have you got?
It's hell. Don't do it. Don't write one.
We've got we've got two coming out. Both are going into publishers this year. The one we're doing right this very second is Volume 1 of Schlock and Awe, the forgotten films of the 90s rental realm, which is our first volume. We're going to do one great, huge, big coffee table book of 2,500 films, but that would have just been insane and would have been incredibly costly.
I mean, this one has aged us horribly. Doing
but we thought let's do it. Let's do like a volume of an encyclopedia. So hopefully at the end of 20 years, if we're still alive, you'll have 10 volumes of Schlock and Awe all lined up on your shelf. So Volume 1, we just finished writing it, so we're just about to enter the process of just getting it all looking nice and neat. Will contain 250 films that we've just picked at random, all the majority with either an interview with a director or a filmmaker or writer, someone like that, just to try and give you the whole history. So the first volume of Schlock and Awe we're just finishing at the moment, and also going into the publisher in December is a book that we've co-written with a lovely guy called Andy Rausch. It's a biography of the cinematographer Gary Graver. Do you know Gary Graver?
Not aware of him, no.
Okay, Gary Graver in 1970 went to a phone box and phoned the Beverly Hills Hotel and said, "Can I speak to Orson Welles, please?" He got put through. Welles answered the phone, and Graver said, "Look, I'm a cinematographer. Can I come and shoot some bits for you?" And Welles said yes. And for the next 15 years, they worked together and made some great films, like F for Fake.
I hate to interrupt you, Andrew. Did you know about this?
Well, he is credited as the cinematographer for The Other Side of the Wind, which still needs a physical media release.
But Andrew, I asked this because you're a big Orson Welles fan, and I'm flabbergasted if you didn't know this. I use that word. I know that was a weird word.
That's a big word.
So Gary Graver worked with Orson Welles from 70 to 85, his death. But while he was filming these bits for Orson Welles, he was doing a number of other things at the same time. He was establishing himself as one of the foremost directors in the pornography business. Between 1975 and 1984, he made 20 amazing pornos, all on 35mm. That even today, Vinegar Syndrome put out 2 of them. They are among the best pornographic movies. I'm not saying this as some kind of pervert. I'm saying this.
He is.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Even Orson Welles did a bit of editing on one called, which was cool. So yeah, he made a lot of pornos. He also did a lot of B-movie and straight-to-video work with filmmakers like Fred Hill and Ray, and that. So yeah, all we've done, we've covered around 40 to 50 of his films and written essays for each one. And our co-collaborator Andy has interviewed between 30 and 40 people who knew Gary, and he's created an oral biography of his life. And so these 2 sides will hopefully glue together quite nicely, and they will make sort of a really cool biography of this guy who needs a little bit more recognition, really, because he was so prolific from 1968 through to his death in 2006. He was, really prolific. He was a great artist, and he shot some amazing footage and never stopped working.
Wow. I'm definitely interested.
I know now what you're saying because I remember hearing this story. It was probably in an Orson Welles documentary or maybe special feature.
You know that one that's on Netflix that came out with The Other Side of the Wind? Is it They'll Love Me When I'm Dead? Something like that. Mm-hmm. That's as much. The back end of that film is as much Graver's story as it is Orson Welles's. So he's featured quite prominently in there, and it goes on about the effect his relationship with Welles had on his family life and things like that, and his own sort of creative endeavours.
Wow. Yeah,
he has 234 credits on IMDb as a cinematographer. So as you're saying, a wealth of a career. Just
there's about 100 of those are shot on video pornos, which aren't the best. Yeah. That's say between 86 and 98. Stuff like Maverick, things like that. They really aren't worth seeking out. But
there's a lot of them here that are like Ecstasy, and I love how he's shot. And then after that, he did the TV movie Stagecoach, and then after that,
But that's it. The diversity is insane. Just a quick story. Because back when IMDb or the internet first came about, Gary Graver had directed 20 features. So if you went onto IMDb at the birth of the internet, you would type up Gary Graver's name, and there would be his 20 features and cinematographer on, I don't know, about 60, 70, 80 features, and it would be like, good career. But then one day, overnight, his porno pseudonym, Robert McCallum, got merged with his name, Gary Graver. And his son said that when he realized that these 2 sides of his career had been merged into one under his real name, he was absolutely horrified, and he just wanted it to be, separated and just forgotten about. Not because he was embarrassed, but just because he thought it would damage his chance of getting work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is a shame.
And it's even more strange the fact that the guy cameos in pretty much all of his porn films as well. So it's like, he's on camera.
He wants to hide it, but he doesn't want to hide it.
Yeah, I guess you're not really hiding it if you're on camera, I guess.
Yeah.
But I do remember Orson talking about him in some type of, probably some interview that he was doing. I've watched so much Orson Welles stuff that it all kind of blends together often. So much stuff from like the Dick Cavett show and all kind of stuff. And it's just all kind of blends together. But yeah, that sounds very fascinating because of the dichotomy of that career, and specifically the connection with Orson Welles.
You've probably seen Graver yourself on the chat shows that he used to be sort of put in as Welles' stooge, when he'd be doing little magic demonstrations and stuff like that. Most of the time, the guy he'd pull out from the audience would be, of course, his pal Gary Graver. So you've probably seen a lot of him without even realising.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, guys, that was fantastic. I think we could probably do this even longer on this portion of the show, but that just means we got to bring you back for another episode. But we're gonna get into what we usually do here, other than interviews, is talk Blu-rays. So you guys game for that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Andrew, where do you want to start?
So let's start I don't know if you want to jump right into the slates or if you want to jump into a couple of little
Well, I didn't
tidbits
tell them
here.
about any little things.
No, but it's stuff people already know about.
Okay, all right, go
This
ahead.
idea that the BFI's new 4K restoration of Get Carter finally gets all the details as well as a release date of July. This is going to be quite a summer for releases. That I'm definitely looking forward to because I've never bought any of the. I think we only got one Blu-ray release here in the States from Warner Brothers, so that's going to be super nice. Of course, it's the film starring the great Michael Caine, and I'm kind of really excited for that release. And I know, Stephen, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago on our show, but I guess they must have heard us out there, and we talked about it briefly this week. Second Sight, their release is official for July 26th as well. Their 4K release of Dog Soldiers. And the reason why we brought that up is because Shout Factory talked about their release, and I guess Second Sight was not going to take that lying down.
I
They
don't
were
know.
like,
I don't
here
know.
comes
I'm
our release.
not
Here's
sure if
all
there was
the
a
details
connection.
now.
Yeah, I'm not sure if there's a connection or not, but
I don't know. It seems a little too close for comfort.
Yeah.
I mean, they went full tilt saying, "Hey, we've got here's our artwork, here's our different releases, here is all the special features," because we hadn't really heard any of the details up until now. We just knew it was coming this summer sometime. So
yeah,
that,
you
go on.
guys. Have you guys seen Dog Soldiers? I'm assuming you have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
A party favourite back in the day when I was a teenager. That what video no less. So the thought that it's coming out on like 4K is insane. Absolutely.
Yeah, talk
insane,
about a movie low budget. Because I don't even think they could find the camera negative for a lot of the early Blu-ray or DVD releases. So I don't know how different this is going to look.
That's how the story goes, isn't it? That's why it was. I remember when the original disc from Scream Factory came out, there was a lot of moaning about the quality of the transfer and stuff because they couldn't actually locate the negatives and stuff. So by all accounts, this Second Sight thing is going to be absolutely monumental if you're a fan of the movie and stuff. So I was
going to say, kind of what we're talking about here when it comes to the Shout Factory stuff getting pulled back is we believe that because Second Sight hadn't announced all their details yet, that and they're the ones I think doing the work on the restoration with Neil Marshall. So I think the fact that they brought their stuff out ahead of them probably didn't sit well.
It won't have done. There is a certain, a competitiveness between certain labels and stuff like that.
I'm sure there is.
We hear a few murmurs here and there about so and so not being happy with so and so and things like that. It's most of it's in quite good spirits, to be fair. It's sort of like a bit of schoolyard competition, seeing who can generate the most hype and stuff. Or that's how it certainly seems to us and the people that we like knock around within our humble little sector. So, but I do think that the Second Sight announced it was almost certainly caused by they're putting that out. Well, here, look at this.
Yeah. And the artwork had already been out there, I think, for a while, and I'd missed it for some reason, but it's an amazing artwork. I don't know if you guys have seen the artwork on the Second Sight release.
Yeah, it looks incredible. Yeah. That box as well. Good God, it looks like if that landed on you, it'd fucking kill you. It's like a tombstone. Jesus. And I'm all for that. I don't want these flimsy little cardboard things. No,
I know.
I want to be able to throw a Blu-ray at someone's window and smash it.
I said the same thing.
Target.
Yeah, I did a video for the all the Hans BR's Severin set, and I pulled it out. I was like, yeah, you could, go next door to your neighbor and your annoying neighbor and knock him over the head with it and knock him out and just, it's so thick and just a brick, just a straight up brick.
If we're paying, relative premium prices for these deluxe editions, they better be solid, solid construction.
What do you think about these deluxe editions? Because obviously, we're getting a release. I don't know what it works out in dollars, but we're looking at £34 over here, so probably like $50 for stuff like, I don't know, Late Mungo came out in that way, Babadook came out in that way, Session 9 came out in that way, The Guest came out in that way, and to me, I don't know if I'm comfortable with paying that amount of money for a fairly recent film. I know I'm going to get stoned in public for saying that, but to me, that's a lot of money just for one film. And I'm talking just on Blu-ray, not on 4K Blu-ray, but on Blu-ray itself, I think in this country between £35 and £40 or $50 to $55.
Yeah,
it's a lot of money for one film. You think, well, what do you get? I know you get the art cards and this and the book and blah 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 blah, but I don't know. I've never dipped my toe into that aspect of collecting.
Well, I was going to say, it is a question that, and this is something I don't want to get us too off tangent here.
No.
But really quick,
Okay.
like there's a couple other film discussion channels. One being Disconnected and Serial at Midnight that had like a really nice open discussion on YouTube about why we collect physical. Why we collect. How we're collecting these days and everything. And one thing, and a lot of what they talked about was how, one side said that it feels like people are collecting movies like they're baseball cards,
right?
Where it's not necessarily about, the movie. It's about like, I want to get all these slip covers and I want it to all look nice on the shelf. And of course that's part of it, but it should be for first and foremost about the movie. But so it seems like how people are collecting these days is affecting how the companies are deciding to sell these products.
Of course,
and so it's making companies say, "Hey, we got one movie, let's give them all we got," and then charge them very premium prices for it.
Just for the record, never once have I stuck a poster up from a Blu-ray. Like, I've never ever used the art. They're nice art cards, and into the case they stay, and I'll never look at them again.
Same here.
Like, I don't get all these frivolous bits and bobs that come in. Even like it was. I remember when Arrow did the Hellraiser, the Scarlet box. It was incredibly cool. Getting I've got a Hellraiser pin badge. What do I do with it? Like, it's just sat on a shelf. Idly sat on a shelf. I am fielding offers for it, though, so if anyone wants to send me, like, something in triple figures, I will happily sell it on. But, nice. I think that a lot of things like art cards and that, it's just, it's crap that I feel I don't need. So I just want a nice version of the movie. And
yeah, I mean, credit to Second Sight, they did some amazing restoration work.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Dawn of the Dead, the work on Dawn of the Dead, but just stunning,
amazing.
But I look at a film like The Guest, which is a great film. Love that film. I've got it on DVD. I'll probably upgrade to Blu-ray, yeah. But do I want to spend £40 on a film that in my life I might watch twice, and it only came out a couple of years ago? So I don't know. To me, that doesn't excite me. Well done for Second Sight. If they got a market for it, then exploit it to the max. Because well done you. But for me, I don't know. I just wondered what your opinion was. But yeah, that's fair enough.
I was gonna say.
I guess it really all depends on what type of collector you are, and I mean, obviously finances, type of financial situation one is in, and also depends on, I guess, like, what do you have the movie already? Do you not have it? Does it need to be in 4K? There's a lot of those out there. For me, it always comes down to, obviously, is it a movie I want in my collection? And two, like, what's the special features looking like? What's the audio, video, and then the aesthetic of the packaging, I guess, is kind of one of the last things on the list for me.
Right.
And it's not because I don't like displaying it on a shelf, which I do. It's just like there are other things that factor more for me personally. And pricing is, of course, I think a big thing as well, because a lot of us out there are buying a lot of these releases. So sometimes you gotta pick and choose what's priority for you. Some people can just buy everything, some people can't. And then the prices fluctuate sometimes when it comes to boutique labels. Not so much when it comes to more mainstream studios. Their prices, their pricing is a lot different. These mostly stay relatively at the same level, but sometimes you do end up getting sales. That's when people really cash in.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely collecting has went through transitions when it comes to how and like you said, it differs person to person. But I do, I see both sides of it. You guys should really check out the conversation on both ends. I'll have to send you links.
I'll do that, please.
I usually watch that. I've seen a few things about Serial at Midnight. I missed that one.
It was like last week sometime.
Right, okay.
And it was just fascinating. They had one point of view, that kind of, and then Disconnected kind of had like a rebuttal kind of point of view, and then one of them from that first conversation jumped into the conversation on their end, and it was good because it was not necessarily in mean spirit. It was everybody had their own point of view, and it came to a nice conclusion, I feel like. But I do think there is a sense that collecting has kind of strayed away from what is centrally important about the collecting. And
I think a lot of it's hoarding now. It's just hoarding for the sake. It's like having a dick measuring contest on Instagram and Twitter a lot of the time. And like it baffles me. Whereas me and Dave, we got two jobs basically. We got our day jobs and this like the whole film criticism hustle. And it's like, how in fuck's name can you people buy every single disc that is getting released? Like you know, I'd maybe buy 2 or 3 a month, and I feel like I'm on the bones of my ass. I don't understand how these people can how are you affording to buy every Vinegar Syndrome, every Second Sight, every Arrow? Like, what on earth? What are you doing? Who are you sleeping with?
Or they're living at home, and I don't know how. It's everybody's got their own situation, but it's
true.
I'm
a more frugal collector. I was actually just having this discussion with someone the other day, where I'm just, I'm always like, checking different prices on different places, seeing what's, is this cheaper someplace else, anything like that. Because I don't think you need to have every single movie that's released every single month or every single week. I think you could be a little more analytical than that. But some people just want to buy it all and just kind of throw caution to the wind
and then post it all over Instagram. So but and then I'll just sit and jealously like it. Muttering to myself about how much I hate them.
But I think it's an interesting, complex conversation to have, and because nobody's wrong. If you have the means, do it. If not, you have to
do what you can.
To be clear, if I had the finances to do it, I'd be buying. I would get. I would be making furniture out of my Blu-ray copies of stuff. I would be sat on a throne of deluxe special editions. I'd be using discs as my coasters. All sorts, and then just for the fuck of it, I probably would hang the posters up. I'd paper my house,
just
with
do
all
it, man.
the papers, everywhere. Art cards. I'd hand art cards out to neighbours, everything, just because I had the cash.
You sound like a fun guy. You said your apartment would be amazing.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah.
But Steven, I guess let's dive into our slates. There's other stuff that I guess we'll save for another time.
Yeah.
Let's dive into the main bulk of the slates. There were two major slates that came out this week. First up being Vision Entertainment, or as we all call it, Imprint. And they had a really solid slate, Steven. Do you want to kind of go over and then we'll discuss them?
Yeah, I'll just run down the list of films here. First, let's start with they got another box set, which is something they like to do, which is another thing that killed me. Of course, being from Australia, their prices are not easy, especially for shipping. But starting there, we have the Jim Sheridan set, 4 Irish films. And they include My Left Foot, The Field, in the Name of the Father, and The Boxer. And 3 of these starring Daniel Day-Lewis.
Yes.
And then we also have The Music of Chance. And then we also have The Beast of... it's called The Beast on here, but I think it's also called The Beast of War as a secondary title.
Yeah, that seems to be when you look that movie up, that seems to be the title you have to go with, because if you title The Beast, it oftentimes doesn't show up.
Yeah. Then we also have movies starring tons of people, but primarily Andy Garcia, and that's Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. And then lastly, we got Nobody's Full, starring Paul Newman, which was delightful. And then The Whore, directed by the great Ken Russell. I'm sure you guys are fans of Ken Russell.
Love Ken. Love Ken Russell.
Yeah.
Big Ken Russell fan.
So that's the rundown of the Imprint films. So where should we start, dude? What Matty? What interests you here?
Are any of these films directed by Jim Wynorski?
Are you? I think you know.
Then I'm not interested. No, I'm kidding.
Okay.
I'm very, very excited for Whore. I love that film. I think it makes a great companion piece to Ken Russell's Crimes of Passion. I think it's a really, really interesting movie. Have you guys seen it before?
No.
Oh,
I did. I watched it last night, actually.
Oh, good.
For the
What
first
did you
time.
think? Did you like it?
It's interesting. It feels so different from, I think, some of Ken Russell's other work. It's part social commentary, part almost a satirical approach to a serious subject, and it's almost a time capsule piece when it comes to the life of sex workers, prostitution, all of those things. And it's trying to be sincere, but also trying to, not poke fun at, but it's also presented in an almost over-the-top manner at times. It's unhinged in many, many ways.
It's obviously, I don't know if you know the story behind the film, but Russell, he designed it as a riposte to Pretty Woman. He was absolutely
it very much feels like the
horrified. He was
anti-Pretty
horrified Woman. that prostitution was presented as this fairy tale. So he gets this play called Bondage, and he does the adaptation of it. Yada yada yada. That's how whore's made. With it though, I do think, as you said, that to me, if I drew a parallel with something else, right? Have you ever seen Matthew Bright's Ted Bundy biopic, Bundy, where very, very serious subject matter. So Bundy, very serious, whore, very serious subject matter. But they're both presented in this weird thigh-slapping, isn't this a bit of a lark kind of way at times? I mean, obviously Bundy's more guilty of that. There's pretty much times where he's winking at the camera and you can hear Matthew Bright going, "Oh, what a wicked little scamp you were, Ted, killing all those women." And then whore is very... There's scenes where when the pimp character is in it and he's really quite nasty and awful and just this vile specimen, but there's almost a sense where you can feel like Ken Russell idolises him and thinks that he's the most interesting character in it when really it's Teresa Russell's story, the story of her character. Again, but very, very interesting movie. And I just think it's very flawed in the way that it's executed. As you guys say, it's not quite as... It's a serious subject, maybe delivered in a kind of tone-deaf way at times.
Yeah, very much so. That's the one big negative I felt with it. And, I mean, it is a film from, I believe, 1990, 1991. It seems dated in, I guess, a lot of its aspects, of course, because, that's 30 years ago. But I think, the whole... the adult industry, the sex work industry has, evolved, so much since, but also a lot of the stuff that's going on in that movie is still rather prevalent. But a lot of it is kind of, of its time. That's why I call it kind of a time capsule piece. And you're right, it is very much the anti-Pretty Woman, and intentionally so. Intentionally so. But it also feels like I thought it would have been more graphic when it comes to the whole
it's quite a chaste movie, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
It's very
even the
subdued.
sexual aspects.
If you compare it to Crimes of Passion, you've got Kathleen Turner riding fuck out of a policeman and sticking a truncheon up his jacksie in that movie. You've got that wonderful sex scene that's all done in silhouette, which is very lavish and very decadent. And then in Whore, it's mostly just through dialogue and stuff, but I guess that's probably a throwback to its stage play origins more than anything, because there's a staginess to it, just as there was a staginess to have you ever seen Salome's Last Dance, that Ken Russell movie that he made that in the same deal as he did Lair of the White Worm with Vestron, and that's a really interesting film, and it's like a meta-referential adaptation of a Oscar Wilde play, and it's basically Oscar Wilde as a character is watching his play being performed in a brothel, so it is very, very stagey and stuff, and very interesting. I think that was maybe just the mode that Russell was working in at the time. They're all made within about 3 or 4 years of each other, so I guess there is going to be a certain degree of stylistic hangover between each movie.
It's a really cool addition from Imprint as well. Obviously, you've got Kat's commentary.
There's a plethora of new features.
I'm really intrigued to see the Bruce LaBruce appreciation. I don't know if you're aware of Bruce LaBruce. He's like this kind of whacked-out filmmaker that made a really cool movie a number of years back called Otto, or Up with Dead People, just this German LGBTQT film that's just bonkers and deserves to be seen. So I don't know why he's there, but I'm looking forward. I'm looking forward to him being there nonetheless.
Nice. Yeah, and and just going back to what we were talking about before we move on to another title. I do feel like the timidness of it undercut the seriousness of it. Like, if you're going to dive into this situation and just to hint at the harshness of this world for the most part, and the obviously it's a sex worker industry, the sexuality of it all. I thought it would have gone a little harsher because I was just, for some reason, don't ask me why, David Cronenberg's Crash, which was a few years later, was such a much harsher film in terms of depicting sexual fetishization and all that kind of stuff, and that's part of the sex industry as well. So I thought it was interesting in many ways, but not so much in others. But moving on to another title. I think for me personally, I guess just going since I'm talking, Nobody's Fool. Paul Newman is my favorite actor of all time, and a lot of his 90s work just hasn't gotten any type of Blu-ray release at all. They're releasing this as well as Twilight, but Twilight's coming in that kind of 90s neo-noir box set that they're putting out, which is a super expensive box set. Talk about pricing. But for me, there's nothing here for special features yet, but just to have this movie on Blu-ray in general is a big thing for me, because I don't even own it on DVD because I've been waiting for the Blu-ray release of this. And of course, this film stars, like I said, Paul Newman, the late great Philip Seymour Hoffman, Melanie Griffin, Bruce Willis is in the film as well, Jessica Tandy. I think it's a really good film. I really do like it a lot.
I like the director, Robert Benton. He made a really cool. Robert Benton made a really cool film in the early 80s. A great Roy Scheider film that not many people draw attention to, called Still of the Night, which is worth checking out. I think it's on Warner Archive or something. It's on one of the MOD labels. But yeah, I haven't seen this. But yeah, it does sound decent.
There's one of my obsessions is in Nobody's Fool. The actor John Marcus Powell. He has an appearance in it, and he thought it was going to be like his. I interviewed him a couple of years. There's a bit of a story behind it, actually. Basically, this guy, Welsh actor, was in soaps over here in England in the 60s, packed it all in, went to teach over in South Africa, and then in the 80s set up shop in New York and started appearing in a couple of New York-made horror movies. Rejuvenator, Metamorphosis, The Alien Factor. I saw him in both of them, and I just completely fell in love with his work. He was like, these were late 80s, early 90s, yet here he was like Vincent Price. And he was just that sort of classy horror kind of, the theatrical campy horror guy. And I was like, who is this man? And he honestly, he looked about 70 years old in both of these movies. And I was like, I just need to find out more information about it. There was nothing online. And the worst thing was, friggin' IMDb. IMDb confused him. They confused his stage name, Marcus Powell, with the name of one of the guys who played one of the fucking Oompa Loompas in the original Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And this guy, looking at him in Rejuvenator and Metamorphosis, he was at least 5'10". So there is no way in hell he'd have ever played an Oompa Loompa unless he was crouching down. So I tried looking for him for a while, or just some information about him, because again, he looked ancient when he was in these movies. And I just, months and months, I wrote an article about him. It's on the Schlock pit. I wrote about his part in Metamorphosis, just for my own, just to document him, just to see if anyone else knew anything about this fella. Few people read it. That was it. Crickets. Heard nothing. And so I just kept it for months. I had this obsessive quest that I will find Marcus Powell. I will find this man. I will find someone who's worked with him to give him more information. So I'd interviewed the director of Rejuvenator a couple of years before. I hit him up again. No, sorry, lost touch with him years ago. Hit up a few more people. I was trawling through like SAG directories and stuff, all the lists of like actors and that, just to try and find any nugget of information about him. Then one day, fannying about on Google, put his name in for a final time and just was flicking through the images, and at like the last page of images, there was a man who looked like him, but just older. And you know, I was thinking, what the hell's this? And anyway, I clicked on it. John Marcus Powell, and it turned out he was now in his mid-70s, and he was a performance poet in New York, going around all like the cafe culture and stuff like that. And so I couldn't get hold of like contact details for him, so I went through his publisher and stuff. Found that he, as luck would have had it, he just completed his first poetry anthology. He'd done a chapbook and then his first poetry anthology, which is amazing, by the way. Glorious Babe, you got to read it. It's awesome. And so I got in touch with his publisher, and I said, "Oh, is this the same John Marcus Powell who was once credited as Marcus Powell and who appeared in a series of B-movies made in New York City in the 80s and 90s?" And so they messaged back saying, "Oh, we'll ask him." Couple of days later, "Yes, it's him. Would you like to talk to him?" Abso-fucking-lutely, yes, I would. And then the next thing, I'm on the phone to the guy, and it was, honest to God, the best 2 hours of my life. It was just the stories he had to tell, and one of them, obviously, he'd been in Rejuvenate, he'd been in Metamorphosis. He thought that even though he was in like his late 50s at this point, he got cast in Nobody's Fool. And he had quite a lot of lines in it and stuff like that. He got to interact with Paul Newman. And he said that like he was doing some off-Broadway work at the time, and that's how the casting director got in touch with him. And so when the film was finished, it was playing at his local theatre, and he bought a load of tickets for his friends and family, and they all came in and sat down to watch Nobody's Fool, and he'd pretty much been cut out of it. Like there was no. He said he didn't have a single line of dialogue. You could see him like in the background of like 4 shots, because it had turned out they decided the subplot that he was part of didn't work. And stuff, and then he finished the anecdote, I shit you not, by saying, "So I got cut out of that, and they did the same thing to me with Pootie Tang." So,
oh man,
he's been cut out of a Paul Newman film and fucking Pootie Tang, the poor bloke.
So he got the Terrence Malick treatment, essentially.
Yeah. But he is a phenomenal actor, though. If you get the chance to see Rejuvenate and his magnum opus Metamorphosis, you have got to see it. Even there's a wonderful little comedy called Mob Boss, I think. That's the Fred Olen Ray film. Mob Queen from 1995, and he has it's a bit of a. It's very dated. You know, it relies a lot on sort of post-crying game. Ooh, aren't transgender people a bit frightening? That's its kind of shtick, but he has a real scene-stealing bit early on before the film becomes a bit too unpleasant and semi-transphobic.
All right. Well, yeah, that's fascinating. Yeah,
that's a fascinating story.
I love hearing stories about very kind of, below-the-line type of people in the industry that, it sounded like looking for this guy was like a movie all on its own.
Oh, it was my life's work for about 3 months. The interview's on the Schlock Pit, by the way. If you go on the Schlock Pit, you can find him in our index. It's a wonder. Like, honestly, I think more people need to see his work, because he could have been one of the big horror guys if he'd have got cast in more stuff like that.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm definitely looking for it. But next title here, we have Things to Do in Denver Before You Die, or When You Die. I checked this out, and it's definitely you can definitely feel the vibes of the Tarantino Reservoir Dogs in here. Anybody else seen that and feel that?
Yeah, I mean it's a good film. I think of that glut of post-Tarantino stuff. I mean, you got to remember back in the mid-90s, it was endless. Everyone wanted to be the next Tarantino. Yeah. And the sort of knockoffs were just, I think they lasted for about 4 or 5 years afterwards. Some great, some a lot not so great. But this was probably up there with the best. Director, who did it? Scott Rose? No. The guy that went on to do Con Air, I forget his name. But yeah, everyone sort of got out of this film and went on to do quite good things. Scott Rosenberg, the writer, he did a wonderful film called Beautiful Girls, which you must see if you haven't. He did that the year prior, the year after it. But yeah, I think of the whole post-Tarantino era, this is definitely one of the better films. great cast as well.
Yeah, I was going to say the cast is amazing. I mean, even the little bit of Christopher Walken you get in there is fun. And then, of course, the other Christopher Lloyd, in kind of a different role than people remember him for. You know, I mean, being, you know, he just, there's one scene where he plays like him and another character are like pretending to be cops, and he's trying so hard to keep this other guy in line. And it's just Christopher Lloyd's just such a fun actor. I anytime I see him in something, I'm happy. And then of course Steve Buscemi shows up for a little bit too, and that was fun too.
There's your Tarantino connection.
Yeah, there's more Tarantino there.
Yeah, great cast. I mean, Andy Garcia, Treat Williams is in the movie, and he playing like just a wild card of a person. Just his intro is rather interesting and iconic when it comes to the movie. Bill Nunn, who of course was in Do the Right Thing, playing Radio Raheem, who he just recently passed away very sadly. Fairuza Balk is in the film as well. This is before she was in The Waterboy, before she was in Almost Famous. She was been on my mind because I just recently rewatched Almost Famous again. So she was in the film as well, and in a rather interesting role as well. This film is very much feels like it has that 90s neo-noir-ish vibe to it, just the premise in and of itself. Also, I think it has kind of that post-Goodfellas vibe as well. I know you mentioned Tarantino, but it feels very similar in like a Goodfellas, like a Casino era type something, where it's dealing with organized crime. You know, I got very much vibe to it as well. Things to Do in Denver When You're Dead. I remember seeing the trailers for this at movie theaters back in the mid-90s, or on television and TV spots or something, because it's a film that's always been ruminating around, and I finally got to watch it. I don't think it's a bad movie. No, I think it's good. It may be a little too long, but I liked it.
It's got a long title, so it's hard to miss.
Appropriate. Very appropriate. But another title that kind of I don't know if you want to go to the box set already, Steven?
Sure, you can.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit, because obviously, 3 out of 4 of these films starring, Daniel Day-Lewis. I think everyone kind of knows who Daniel Day-Lewis is by this point. This is some of his, early work and some of his great work. My Left Foot, he won his first Oscar for, I believe. I think In the Name of the Father is a fantastic movie, which has gotten a Blu-ray release here several years ago. I may actually have it somewhere, but I know it's getting, all of these releases I think are getting at least new features, or at least one new feature, whether it's an interview with the director or a new audio commentary with someone. So you're getting new stuff even if you already own these movies. But the one film in this box set I want to talk about is The Field, which doesn't star Daniel Day-Lewis, but stars Richard Harris and John Hurt, and Sean Bean are in the film. Tom Berenger is in the film. And I thought this was a really good movie. Like, a film I don't believe it has gotten a Blu-ray release before. I think they said this is its premiere on Blu-ray. And I don't know if anyone's seen it, but it's a film dealing with Richard Harris's character is someone who, I guess his family's been working this property for many, generations and stuff, and but he doesn't own it. He's just renting it from someone else, and that person decided to sell it, and selling it at auction to the highest bidder, and the highest bidder happens to be an American played by Tom Berenger.
Damn and Americans.
Yeah, I know, coming in and stealing people's lands. Yeah, there's a historical precedent for that.
Yeah.
and basically it's him and his son, played by Sean Bean, a young Sean Bean, because this film I think came out in 1990.
Wait a second. Does he die in this movie?
I ain't saying nothing,
okay,
Steven.
Damn it.
You'll have to watch the movie itself.
Okay.
To find out. But Sean Bean is playing Richard Harris's son, and they're trying to figure out ways in which to prevent this person from buying this land. And Richard Harris is amazing in the movie. Like, as the movie goes along, he gets more and more obsessed with keeping this land. Like, he'll do anything to keep this land. And I sometimes I forget how much of a legendary actor Richard Harris is or was. and he just was really good in this movie. And John Hurt is also fantastic. You have a lot of great actors in these movies. Just wanted to point that out. But I thought that was the one I want to highlight because the others I think people have seen.
Yeah, guys, anything on any of these films?
I was just listening to that because that is actually the one I haven't seen of them.
Okay.
So yeah, that you've sold it to me. Obviously, I don't think I'll be paying the Australian import prices, but
that is the problem. Yeah.
No, but it's a good set. Jim Sheridan needs some love for that.
Yeah, definitely.
Recently sat through his latest documentary, which was really good. It's about the murder of a young French girl in the southwest coast of Ireland. And it was fantastic. He presented it and obviously directed it, and it was a really gripping documentary. It's a great set. It's a great set. It doesn't have in America though. No, not being awkward or anything. But yeah, that's also a great film.
Yeah. Yeah, he's kind of a director that, he's had its moments, but he kind of doesn't get talked about a lot with his work.
These are 4 solid films for a career. Like if you got to make these movies, you've had a pretty good career. But yeah, like you said, he has gone more to documentaries and such now. He only has about 17 director credits on IMDb. And the chunk of it is the early stuff with Daniel Day-Lewis starting out his career. It's very, very interesting. He also directed some interesting stuff later on, like Get Rich or Die Trying, Brothers, which is the film starring Natalie Portman, and of course Jake Gyllenhaal, as well as Tobey Maguire and Sam Shepard's in the film. Just an interesting, later career for him.
Yeah, not a big fan of Dreamhouse though.
I was just going to mention that next. Then he went to Dreamhouse. He went from a family drama about PTSD and war and stuff to kind of horror.
Is that the one with Daniel Craig and?
Yeah, Daniel Craig and Rachel Weisz.
Yeah, that's not.
Elias Koteas, Naomi Watts.
Yeah. I heard it pays well though, this directing business. So.
Sometimes you do things,
Right.
To do other things.
You can.
Yeah.
But yeah, Steven, anything else you want to talk about? I did see The Music of Chance.
I've seen I saw The Beast.
You did see The Beast.
Yeah.
What did you think of that? Because it's a movie covering an interesting. It's a very interesting film when it comes to what it's covering historically and what is actually happening now in the world.
Yeah.
Kind of lines up interestingly.
Well, the thing is in a sense, and I can say this because I feel like all war films include America. I don't think this would include America.
No, this film
Thank God.
Yeah, I know. This film is actually about the Russian invasion of Afghanistan in the early 80s. And of course, Russia is, I guess history is very cyclical, so they're doing the same type of thing now. Not to get too political or historical, but it's a film that is depicting that, but it's a very kind of localized issue. Basically, it covers this tank troop, and they're kind of lost in the desert, and they're kind of trying to survive. But the main commander, or their main military person, kind of overseeing this, is a bit of an asshole. He is
a little bit
terrible. He makes General Patton look like Mickey Mouse. It's really, he's really harsh. And
there's some brutal scenes. There's one
scenes.
Particular scene near the beginning where
the very first scene of this movie is horrific to the point where I'm like, okay, I hope this other person who did this dies.
Yeah, I mean, like they run over an innocent person with their tank. Like it's it's just horrifying.
That's why I said this person, this commander is a horrific person, and it made me, I don't know, it's a film where I don't know if I was supposed to sympathize or empathize with this Russian tank troop, but I really didn't at all, Stephen. That's what I think really held me back in terms of enjoying the movie.
I think it tries to be sympathetic on both sides, but I think it tries. Yeah. But I do think that this is a pretty, I think, at least from my point of view, kind of a discovery.
Yeah, I
a
think
nice
it's
little
it's a
discovery because I
hidden
wasn't
film.
aware of the
it's
movie.
It's actually a really good film. It's directed by Kevin Reynolds, who I think is a director we've brought up a couple of times because he directed Kevin Costner in a lot of his,
Well, yeah, he did
more
the
prominent
Fandango,
work.
didn't he? The recent one we talked about, Fandango, or was it the American Flyers?
Yeah, he did do Fandango,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
he did Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves. He did
Yeah.
Waterworld. He did the Hatfields and McCoys miniseries from a few years ago, 10 years ago now. Damn, time moves fast. And
So yeah, he's done some good work. I mean, but you got Matty, Dave. Have you guys seen The Beast?
Never.
Nope.
Completely so far removed from my wheelhouse. It sounds fascinating. Don't get me. I don't want you thinking that a large chunk of our lives is spent watching direct to video and B movies and stuff. But we do like dipping our toe in other stuff. But I've never seen this movie. Never. Ever.
yeah, I never heard of
Completely
it
unfamiliar
until
with it.
No. I mean, it stars some notable names. Jason Patric, Stephen Bauer, Stephen Baldwin is in the film. Stephen Bauer is playing like a leader of an Afghan Mujahideen like rebel fighting group, and I didn't recognize him for most of the movie. And I'm like, is that Stephen Bauer playing someone from Afghanistan? Which I guess doesn't really quite work in the sense that he's Cuban. So I'll talk about kind of, it is, the late 80s, and that still happens today, but it was odd once I figured it out.
But yeah, I mean, we put in a lot of effort. Just if we didn't put in the effort we did, we would have not seen a lot of these movies. Like we try to get in some of these watches right before episodes. So and all the stuff you guys have been talking about on this episode, it's going over my head. Like a lot of it's going over my head because I don't know half of what you're talking about. Yeah, I know. But what you're doing is you're bringing my attention to it, and I definitely it piques my interest, and I'm gonna do when I have time. I do have a baby on the way. When I have time, between the cries and the hallucinations I'm gonna have from sleep deprivity, I'll probably read some of your stuff when I get a chance to especially the Gary Graves stuff. So
I mean, there's stuff that we discovered so much stuff while watching and while doing watches for the show and stuff from that guests bring up all the time.
It's
kind of the awesomeness about doing all of this.
Yeah,
I think it goes both ways as well. It's like there's always the assumption where because you write about movies, you're a film critic, whatever. Everyone's like, have you seen this? It's like, actually no, I haven't seen every single movie. You try to plug as many gaps as possible, don't you? But it's impossible to see everything. It really is. It'd take more than your lifespan to be able to do that. There is so much stuff out there, and it's like I find everything that someone recommends to me gets like noted down, and I live with the optimistic belief that eventually I will get round to it. But it's got to a point now where my to watch pile is that big. I'll probably be dead before I even get halfway through it.
But it's important to add though that there's no shame in admitting to not watching stuff.
No, not at all. No.
I think it's quite endearing for people to say, "Oh, I haven't seen this."
No, there's only so much time.
A lot of people do blag it. A lot of people do try and pull the wool over people's eyes and say, "Oh yeah, I've seen that."
And it's
I
so
think we've all
awkward.
done that.
It's so awkward. That.
Yeah, and you try to play it off as if you have seen it, and you're just
yeah,
just really quiet.
we're pushing that limit right now because we just started doing a new show called The Unwatched Pile, and so so we're gonna start telling people stuff that we own that we haven't watched yet, and some of the stuff
it can be a little embarrassing. Like I hadn't seen Tarkovsky's Solaris, and it kind of embarrassing.
And you call yourself the host of a cinema podcast.
I probably had that Blu-ray in my collection for like 10 years, and it was just sitting on the shelf, just not being watched, and it's one of the things I just never got to.
What was it?
And then you just kind of you don't forget about it, but it's just like it just gets overtaken.
I can't think what it was. There was something where Dave actually knocked me for 6 in the middle of a fucking commentary because like it came out. It was some Spielberg movie, like a really, really like And like, I remember there was like a pause because I was like, "What? Like, genuine? Really? Really? That's the film you haven't seen?"
Like I said at the start of the show, I missed the whole coming of age thing. So I still haven't seen Star Wars. I still haven't seen Close Encounters, Indiana Jones. I've just bypassed those, and I'm no worse off. I'm still okay, you know.
Yeah, you're okay.
Look what I'm doing.
But just
now.
remember that when you're looking for his opinion on a Gary Graver film, remember that this is without the context of Close Encounters of a Third Kind. So.
But it's interesting is that you have a completely different perspective on those movies now as an adult versus when you were a child.
I can imagine. Yeah,
it's a completely different viewpoint, and it's just it may be even more interesting because
possibly,
you know the movies being what they are, and just there's so much hype around them now that you almost hope that it lives up to it.
Well, that's why I'm reluctant to watch them. I have the time. Some days I think, should I finally watch Top Gun for the first time?
Yes,
but
you should.
Yeah. And I think, well, yeah, but I kind of you've kind of seen so many clips, you've seen so many aspects of it, and you've seen so much dialogue, and you've seen so many commentaries, thought pieces and think pieces, and all this kind of thing. You kind of know what you're going to expect. So I don't want to sit there come the end credits and think, yeah, that's fine. I kind of knew what to expect. I'd rather go for something that might surprise me that I've never even heard about. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to looking, experiencing those movies for the first time, I think context about the movie and when it came out, I think is going to mean a lot more.
Yeah.
I mean, specifically for Star Wars. Star Wars means so much to so many different people, but as someone who appreciates film history, like us and maybe many people, if you put it in the context that there was nothing like it when it appeared,
True.
it makes it have a different kind of feeling.
Yeah.
If you put it in that context.
I mean, I don't watch any of the Marvel stuff. I think I've stopped caring after like Iron Man 2. I just it's just not for me. I just don't understand it.
I have to defend myself all the time. Like I keep up with it, but I don't put a lot of energy into it anymore because I just it's too exhausting. There's too much to keep up with, and honestly, it's gotten pretty repetitious. So I'm with you. I don't really keep up with it too much. But everybody, I mean, if you like it, you like it. I mean, it's fine. I mean,
I'm not judging you. ...
Of course not.
Publicly, in my own head, I think, grow up. Stop reading comic books. No, I'm kidding. Or am I? Am I just hedging my bets?
You'll never know, guys. You'll never know.
But I just think and as well, it's like why do I want to watch 3.5 hours of these people in tights shooting at each other and stuff. It's just like I don't know. I'm just not. I did see Guardians of the Galaxy and I thought that was very good. That's
well, yeah,
certainly...
I mean, of course, James Gunn is somebody that you probably admire.
And again,
for some of his
which
stuff.
probably explains why. Yeah, the original Spider-Man, Tim Burton's Batman Returns. There's certain things that capture my imagination with it and stuff like that, but it's just I don't feel even I was obsessed with Star Wars as a kid. I when the reissues came out in 1997, I was like 9 years old. And so I was just absolutely, like, me and my brother were just buying all the toys and just obsessed with them. And then, like, as I've gotten older, and do you know what really puts me off is the inability to talk about these movies sensibly. That, like...
Yeah. Oh, it's bad.
Yeah, like,
no. It's really bad.
You don't even dare use Star Wars on social media because it will just... There's just an I had to mute that Restore the Snyderverse crap for all the for all that Batman and Superman thing like I used to have Batman bed sheets and then I see these grown man babies squawking on the internet and I'm just like, you have just disgraced my Batman bed sheets. You make me want to go to my parents' house and throw all my Batman toys out that I have obsessively made them keep hold of on the off chance that one day I will have a son as obsessed with the Caped Crusader as I was as a child. But, like, they just... You can't talk about... You can't bring attention to any of their flaws or anything like that. You can't... And, like, I'm not saying that they are all inherently flawed and stuff, but, I mean, there's no nuance to any conversation. It's always like, people either think, oh, they're the worst things ever and they're killing cinema. Even... They're bringing in poor friggin' Martin Scorsese and the like into these debates, and it's just insane. Like, who gives a shit what a 70-odd-year-old bloke thinks of these? Like, fair enough, he's made some of the best movies ever. Let him have his opinion. Stop. What were you railroading him for? What point are you trying to prove by roasting the guy on social media? You're just coming across looking like an asshole.
And the thing is they got to understand he doesn't care what you think.
No.
Yeah, I mean that's ultimately he does not care that you don't like his opinion.
Yeah, a lot of people, you know, everyone can have their own opinion. Everyone can say, I guess, whatever they want. You know, freedom and all that kind of stuff, freedom of expression, which I'm all for. But there's also this idea where not everyone has to agree with you or listen to you or debate with you about everything. Your opinion is your own, and it may be important to you and to maybe some other people, but not to everyone. And people have to realize that.
There's also a sense, I think, where we need to have, and I think everybody needs to do this sometimes, is to have a little bit of self-curation about what you feel the need to talk. Because sometimes you just need to shut up. Yeah. I mean, sometimes it's not worth talking about and getting when you know it's going to push somebody's buttons, or just shut up.
You know, I mean, you got to be aware. I mean, there needs to be a lot more awareness of what you're doing, how you're acting, how you think you're going to come across to other people. You know, you got to be more aware.
I'm not saying you should hold back on your like honesty. Like, you should be honest, but if you're just trying to create like a problem, like that's not getting us anywhere. And unfortunately, the internet causes that problem all the time.
Because there's
like you said,
no nuance at all.
Yeah.
It's a culture of extremes. Like,
Yeah.
for example, Joker. You know, I actually saw that for the first time the other night, Joker, and you know, you've got half the internet telling you it's the best film ever, and it'll inspire things within you that you never thought possible, and then you've got the other half telling you that it's absolutely awful. And I watched it, and my ultimate take was, yeah, it was all right.
Yeah.
It was okay. Like, it killed 2 hours. Like, it's not that, I have my issues with it, but there's a lot of things that it did right. And I think that a lot of people tend to forget that if you look at most people's letterbox ratings, for example, the vast majority of movies out there are all right. They're just okay. Yeah. They're there. They will entertain you. Very few movies are truly horrific. Very few movies are masterpieces. They're all somewhere in the middle, in that grey area of like 2, 3, and 4-star territory, if you're going to be so vulgar as to give them star ratings and stuff. And I think like a lot of people just forget that the vast majority of films, all right, it entertained me, and that's okay. But why do we have to have these raging slanging matches just because I dared say I didn't like Baby Yoda? You know, I just don't get it.
Sorry, no. That's Grogu. He's got a name.
Is that what
now.
it's called? I mean, look, I don't care.
You're so out of it, man. And they'll go at you for meaningless stuff like that. Like, oh, his name's Grogu. It's like,
get it right.
Like,
he's
we
a
know
person.
who you're talking about.
Yeah.
We know who you're talking about.
It's the ones who, when you voice a negative opinion like that, like, oh, I saw Batman vs Superman, I wasn't a fan of it. It's, oh, well, you've only got 300 fucking followers. Like, what? What? How does that, like, invalidate my opinion? Like,
that doesn't really invalidate your opinion.
For the record, I don't. I have substantially more than that. But I was just using that as an example. You know, it's just weird. People are strange.
People. I mean, the world is getting incriminately and ever so more strange. Like, nothing should really surprise anyone anymore. But let's move back to movies. Steven, do you want to move over now to Criterion?
Yeah, I was going to say, we were talking about
Speaking
Scorsese.
of Scorsese.
We were speaking of Scorsese.
Oh, nice.
Let's go over to Criterion.
Very good. Well done.
Yes. Andrew, go ahead.
Yes. So we got our July releases for the Criterion Collection. Some of these are going to be not real surprises to anyone. First up is, talk about Martin Scorsese, is Raging Bull is getting a 4K UHD release through Criterion, and then we're going to have a 4K UHD re-release of The Virgin Suicides, because they've already put this out on Blu-ray a few years ago, which I bought immediately when it came out, and now I have to debate whether I want to upgrade.
Hey, I didn't buy it, so I'm good.
Well, because I wanted it so badly in my collection, because I like the movie so much.
Yeah.
It's probably my favorite Sofia Coppola movie. I know a lot of people go straight to Lost in Translation, but I go straight to the Virgin Suicides. There's something about that movie that is hauntingly, just a haunting film. Then we have Bong Joon-ho's Okja, which is getting a regular Blu-ray release. Then we have David Lean's Summertime, which is finally getting an upgrade from DVD to Blu-ray. And then we have Drive My Car, which is a brand new film that came out in 2021. That is getting a Blu-ray release as well. And then we've got another release, and this is getting a 4K UHD release of Devil in a Blue Dress, the Carl Franklin film. This just got a Blu-ray release from Indicator not too long ago, I think.
Yes.
Was it last year or maybe 2020?
I think it was near the end of last year. Yeah.
Okay. So this is once again getting another Blu-ray release, and it did get a Blu-ray release here in the US several years ago under Twilight Time, I believe, put out a Bluray of this movie.
Are they still going
at some point?
Are they? Sorry to interrupt there. I always.
Yeah.
Are they still around or?
The company itself kind of went under a bit, but then got kind of taken over by Screen Archives, and they're still putting out. They're still putting out releases ever so often, but it's different people running it now, and at some of their releases are still in print, and then most of their catalog, the distribution license has run out, and it's getting picked up by, everyone, I guess. But I think what ended up happening with the company, I don't really know too well. One of the founders, Nick Redman, I believe, passed away, once he passed away, because you'll see his commentaries and special features on a lot of stuff keep popping up. I believe he's one of the co-founders who passed away, and then the company didn't last much longer after that. But it was a great company that put out a wealth of, catalog titles, specifically from 20th Century Fox. I know they had a lot of that stuff, and they worked, I think, with Sony as well. But a lot of their stuff is now getting picked up by like Kino and Indicator, and obviously, I guess Criterion has jumped into it with Devil in a Blue Dress. But I really like that line, that company a lot. I still have a lot of their releases, and I would still like to get some stuff that hasn't been re-released yet.
I always remember the big controversy with the Tom Savini remake, A Night of the Living Dead, from them, the colour grade on that. I remember that being quite the talking point maybe 10 years ago, where everything had been changed to like a weird blue tint and stuff.
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah.
And I remember
the teal conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I remember that selling out fast. Their stuff used to sell out very fast.
Biggest, I can remember it being their biggest seller. Like it was sold out before it was like officially released, just through pre-orders and stuff. And then obviously the uproar came because of the transfer and stuff like that. And it's just weird. Like I rewatched that movie a couple of months ago. I noticed it was on IMDb TV. And rather than going upstairs to get my Australian Blu-ray of it, which used the correct colour timing by all accounts, I put the IMDb version on. It was the same scan, the same blue tinted scan, which I thought. I mean, it wasn't. It's not an ideal way to watch it, but it's not unwatchable. It still it was very crisp and stuff, but it was just weird. It kind of gave me the feeling of when you'd watch something back on VHS when you know that it's not the way it was intended because it's been panned and scanned and stuff. It had that kind of like, this is probably not the version to watch, but it's still better than no version at all. Right.
And I guess, follow-up question, how do you feel about, certain aesthetic changes to movies when it comes to new formats coming out? We've talked about this, I think, several times, Stephen.
Yeah. I mean, we've kind of gotten to a point where it seems that there is a kind of divide where, if there's something getting a new restoration, there's always a chance that you're really going to get a different presentation than you might have seen before on any other kind of release, because in the restoration process, it changes things, So, that's where I think that there's more conversation to be had than what I initially...
I just want, since he brought it up, I want to get his opinion about, like how do you feel, like, should that be... Is that okay? Is it not okay? Would it prevent you from buying a release if you knew?
I think it depends on whether I care about the movie a great deal or not. There's some things where I can be like, okay. Like, there's... when Fred Olen Ray Retro Media reissued Haunting Fear, when they put that on Blu-ray, again, I think I mentioned it earlier, it's an absolutely stunning release, but there's been a few little editorial tweaks to it. He's, like, sweetened up maybe about 30 seconds of footage and stuff here and there, just tightened it up a bit. It's not to the detriment of the film by any stretch of the imagination, but there is a sort of, maybe a little niggle where it's like, I wish you could have made of that other version, of the original version of the film, available too. The big one for me has always been Phantasm. Like, I'm really, really annoyed that I got rid of, like, my original Phantasm Blu-rays. Original Phantasm DVD, sorry, because as much as Arrow's set is brilliant, the restoration that Coscarelli himself supervised, him and J.J. Abrams elected to take the reflection of the camera out of the shining silver spheres at certain moments, and people will be like, oh, well, it's improved the film, it's not took you out of the reality of it. Yes, but that's not how the film was presented initially. I want to see it in the version that was shown in cinemas, ideally. That should the original version. Like I love Ridley Scott, I really do. But I wish he'd stop fannying about with his movies after the fact. Just
he loves to
leave
recut.
them alone. Once they're out there, move on.
He and Coppola right now are recutting stuff.
And again, another genius, but he annoys the life out of me recutting. Like that version of Dementia 13 that Vestron put out, the director's cut. No, just give me the grotty version that was on public domain DVD. Just give me that in HD. Stop fannying about with the film. We don't need
I think
director's cut.
Steven and I's when it comes to like difference between director's cuts, theatrical cuts, whatever cut, just give it to us. Let it, just put it all on there and let us choose which one we want to watch. Yeah, at least Ridley Scott was here's 5 cuts of Blade Runner. Yeah. Pick which one you want to watch. I've got mine, absolutely. But yeah.
Yeah, I think availability would be nice at least, because I mean I'm kind of on both sides now. The more I learn about restorations, the more I understand that sometimes the aesthetics might change a little bit within that. Now when they make editorial things, that's to me where I'm like a little bit like I wish you'd just leave it alone. But if you're going to do that, give us the option. And then also, like you're saying, Matty, that there's something about leaving the film to what it was when it was made at the time it was made. The charm, you're losing the charm of what the film was when you're messing with it years later, and any kind of mistakes you're trying to erase the mistakes. And I'm like, well, the mistakes part of what I like about it. Yeah, like it's got, because filmmaking's not supposed to be perfect. It's supposed to be people making it, and people ain't perfect. So let the mistakes stay. Like it's just part of what it is.
Right, and we're talking about Criterion, and we keep bringing up Criterion's release of Stephen, what was it? The Coen Brothers, Miller's Crossing, where they cut out with 2 minutes of the movie. The Coen Brothers did, but they didn't. No one really told us, and then people bought the release and were like, "Hey, there's stuff missing here," and they're like, "Oh yeah, the Coens wanted to cut 2 minutes from the movie." It's like, would have been nice, a little transparency.
Yeah, that should have been flagged up beforehand. That's really dubious and dodgy and things like that. It's like I remember again going back to, which always sticks in my mind because I remember reviewing it for the site that me and Dave met on. Have you ever seen Tourist Trap? The old like the sort of weird House of Wax meets Carrie meets Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Big cult horror film. It's excellent, really creepy, really scary. The version of that first got released on Blu-ray, I can remember like being so excited to watch. Oh my god, I'm reviewing one of my favourite horror movies, and wait a minute, this isn't the right version. There's bits missing here. Why is that scene there and not there like it was on the DVD's restoration and stuff like that? And it wasn't until the film had come out, that the Blu-ray had come out, that people had become aware that they'd used a slightly different cut of it, and that's annoying. That's really, really irritating. Yeah. Put the version of the film that most people fell in love with on, or at the very least, just at least, like you said, give the option of other things. Like I do admire Scott in the sense that, he put different versions of Blade Runner on. Okay, at least then you can pick your poison,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I believe this slate, as you've said, Andrew, this is kind of one of the best overall slates.
This
I think
may be
we've
one
seen.
of the best slates that I've ever seen from Criterion. We're getting 4 new to 4K UHD releases, plus 2 Blu-rays.
And getting more
Raging
Martin
Bull
Scorsese, and
was
this
a
is prime
surprise.
Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, I mean, many consider this the best movie of the 1980s, I guess critically wise or whatever. Of course, it's the movie starring Robert De Niro as well as Joe Pesci, who was playing the famous, real life boxer Jake LaMotta, and it's a biopic. If people love biopics, it's one of the best. And I believe this was originally on Laserdisc back in the day, and it hasn't been on the Criterion Collection since. So it is getting a brand new numbering of 1,134. And yeah, I thought this was a surprise. But it looks like those MGM titles seem to be up for grabs right now when it comes to studios.
Yeah, I guess
more than I thought they would be, since Amazon owns a lot of them, and Warner Brothers kind of owns a lot of them as well.
There is a worry where quite a few of these the deal might have been done before Amazon took over. I know in the past 88 have had a few MGM titles that they've been sat on for X amount of months before they're actually announced and or released and stuff. A lot of the time they tend to operate 6 months to a year in advance. And stuff.
I was looking back at a few text messages from '88, and there's a couple of Arrow films that they've had for about 2 years that haven't been announced, that are still going through the process of clearance and extras and stuff like that. So yeah, that might be one of the issues why this is on this slate.
I hope not, though. I hope that Amazon are still going to be very generous with because the MGM catalogue, there's some glorious movies that run the entire spectrum from delirious B movies to stone cold classics like Raging Bull. They have got a hell of a catalogue. Like and historically they've always been the ones where they're the guys who we see release packages the most from, in terms of when we're at 88, they're the ones who there's always when we're given titles, it's like, is there any MGM titles you guys would recommend for the slasher range, or for this range, or this range and shit? And when we're going through them all, there's always an MGM catalogue, with all things from MGM to go through. And there's such a richness there to pull from this, and it frightens me that potentially these films are just forever doomed to be on Amazon Prime rather than getting the physical media releases that they deserve.
Yeah. Most definitely, yeah, and the fact that it's, I think we're getting further and we're getting more and more Scorsese in the collection and I think there's even more. I was talking to Dan Skip Allen earlier. There's even more, I think, coming this year, not through boutiques, but I think we're getting some more of his prime work going 4K as well. So
we've already gotten this. There's already been a handful of his movies that have gotten 4K releases.
Yeah,
both Casino and Goodfellas have already gotten 4K releases.
Yeah, and I think The Departed's coming this year. The Departed's getting a 4K.
Yes, The Departed is coming, which it desperately needs. That 2006 Blu-ray is not it anymore.
What's your criteria, no pun intended, for upgrading to 4K? We're both still on Blu-ray, because obviously you don't get many David DeCoteau films on 4K. But we're both still on Blu-ray. So what's your criteria for taking a film that you own on Blu-ray?
I know Steven's a lot more hesitant than I am when it comes to upgrading. So, right. Steven, I'll let you your rationale.
Really, kind of like when you're like what you were talking about earlier, with a lot of choices you're making with your collections. It just really depends on how much I like the movie.
Sure.
Sometimes I like to get an opinion of somebody that's actually watched the 4K beforehand, to see how much of an aesthetic difference there is. Sometimes I just don't feel like, what's the point of trying to get an upgraded movie from the 50s in 4K? What are they going to do to it digitally to really kind of mess with the image? Are they going to take a lot of that grain out, because the grain's part of it?
Well, if anything, the 4K will make the grain more apparent.
And so in a sense, that's kind of bad too. I don't want it to take over the image either. So it's like, I don't know. I go back and forth.
I know what you mean.
Typically, 4Ks for me are newer films than older films, but I'm more hesitant than Andrew is. I don't know. I think Blu-rays look just fine.
Sure.
A lot of it for me is it is film dependent. It is dependent on the quality of how does this 4K look compared to the Blu-ray. Is it a significant difference? Because a lot of the Blu-rays, we're talking about Raging Bulls, as an example. That Blu-ray came out in 2011, put out by MGM. 2011 Blu-ray technology and 2022 4K technology is a lot different when it comes to a Blu-ray release. So this film could look miles and miles better. And it already looked really, really good for when it came out over a decade ago. And a lot of it, for me, I think more importantly, is the restorations, the preservation, and all of that stuff as well. A lot of these movies, are getting, better treatment now than they've ever had before. And a lot of them also maybe are films I haven't bought yet, or maybe it's, stuff I've had on DVD. If it's a DVD to 4K upgrade, I think that's a no-brainer for me. But it really all depends. For this Raging Bull release, I'll probably get it because I love Martin Scorsese and his work. Yeah. That's kind of something for me. But it is dependent on that. When it comes to some of these other releases, like, for example, The Virgin Suicides, I just bought that Blu-ray a couple years ago when it came out. I don't know if I need to upgrade, to the 4K right away. I may do it in the future. But then they also put out The Red Shoes, which is one of my favorite movies of all time. And while that Blu-ray looks amazing, I couldn't pass up that movie looking even more amazing.
Well, there's also there's also a difference. Like, Technicolor film is it lasts and it holds together a lot better than other types of film stock. So
I'm very curious what that Technicolor is going to look like in 4K. And to see it pop even more than it already does is something I kind of really want to experience. It's
that film is it's got a lot of color. It's got a lot of things that would really go good with something with a sharper image. So
that Jack Carter cinematography is out of this world. But so it really all depends on those factors and cost as well. That was one of the big things when 4K came in. I was like, what are we going to do when it comes to cost versus Blu-ray? Is it going to push Blu-ray costs down? How much more expensive is it going to be? And 4K is getting more and more affordable, just like Blu-ray got more and more affordable. I still want to keep it as close to Blu-ray prices as I possibly can, just because, financial reasons, of course. But it really all depends. Like, I don't think everything needs a 4K release. Like, there were some movies that the main studios were throwing out early on in 4K that I'm like, this really doesn't need it. Yeah. I don't need a 4K edition of, Van Helsing starring Hugh Jackman. I kind of don't need it.
Don't you? Don't you?
Of course you do.
And that's not even a shot at the movie. Just saying, like, I don't know if I need to make that big of an investment in that movie right now. But
it's
but if it's something like Blade, that would be something that would be interesting. Yet again, it's a re-release of an older Blu-ray in 4K. Probably a release that needed to happen anyway in some form.
But I think it ultimately comes down for me to if I like the movie enough that I feel the need to upgrade it again. If it looks good enough on Blu-ray, I think typically I feel confident enough that that's where I need to stay. It's fine, But yeah, let's move on to some other. Let's talk a little bit about. I know you watched Drive My Car. I didn't get a chance to watch that.
Oh yes, I did. I planned on watching it anyway eventually, and I guess this was the final catalyst for watching it. And this film, did recently just win the. It was the Academy Award for Best International Language Film, and it is as good as people said it is. It is a 3-hour-long film. It is a slow film. It's a very patient film.
This sounds like right up Matty's alley.
If you're looking for a 95-minute film, this is not it. This is not it. And yeah, it's as good as everyone says it is. It's very thematically heavy. You know, it's about somebody who's, it's 2 years after someone losing their significant other, and they are putting on the play of the Anton Chekhov play of Uncle Vanya, I believe it is, and it's kind of him, traversing that, but also traversing the loss of someone.
So there's no boobs or chainsaws.
No,
in this
not
film.
really.
Okay, right.
I thought this movie was
clear.
like I thought this movie was like a remake of Driving Miss Daisy or something.
You know
That's
what?
what I
A lot of people
I'm just
thought
kidding.
that. A lot of people think this movie's all about him in a car and being driven around. It's not. There's an actual plot to this movie, which I wasn't quite expecting. And but it's really sincere, very genuine, amazing acting. The screenplay is really, really good for a film that this long and having to sustain itself for 3 hours. You just get kind of enveloped on this journey. It's very, very good.
Okay. Any interest, guys?
We don't have that much time for 3 hour long contemporary Japanese
There's a
cinema.
lot. I'll be honest, there's not a lot of time for
Yeah,
3 hour
I
long
mean,
movies.
that's basically two
Understandable.
Fred Olen Ray movies I could watch in that time. So
Yeah. No, I'm thinking the same way all the time. I'm like, a lot of times I get my best watching time when my wife's at work. So I'm like, okay, my wife works from 4 to 10. Okay, so I can fit this movie in, and I'm trying to look at and compare the times, and I'm like, okay, I can fit more movies in if I watch these movies. So I'm with you. I'm always doing that.
It's always good to see Criterion releasing contemporary films.
Yeah.
That's nice. It gives you a nice blend. Rather, and that's what you can say about that slate. In if you factor in Okja, Drive My Car, Summertime from the 50s, Devil in the Blue Dress from the 90s, Raging Bull from the 80s. It's a great blend over time. So it's a great diverse.
Different times, different cultures.
Yeah, and I do
Bong
like the
Joon-ho, you got Carl
Yeah,
Franklin, black
yeah.
director. You got
you have Korean cinema in here, you have Japanese cinema, and I just like to stress this, people seem to be afraid of subtitles. Don't be afraid of subtitles.
Yeah.
That seems to turn a lot of people off. And I have no problem with them. And
Well,
I just kind of encourage people to kind of open yourself up to other languages, other cultures, because you're going to learn a lot.
I don't have a problem with subtitles, but I didn't really love Okja. I will say that.
If you want to transition to that, that's the one that I think may not be the hottest seller. It is curiously another release of a Netflix film, which I think we knew this was coming for a little while now, Stephen, if I remember.
Well, I think when they put out his recent film, Parasite, on the collection, I think that kind of opened up the idea that we were going to get more of it. And of course, Memories of a Murder, yeah, and
which thank goodness that finally came out. But yeah, Okja is the film that he made for Netflix a few years ago. I remember this film had such a hubbub and such a controversy at the Cannes Film Festival, where they didn't want to screen it because they were so against streaming movies and stuff, and it's a whole lot of nonsense.
Absolutely
movies are movies,
ridiculous,
depending on where
yeah.
they're.
Yeah.
Obviously, Netflix are going to be short of a few quid in the coming years with the amount of subscribers that are leaving. Do you think they're ever going to try and raise some money by maybe entering physical media a bit more often?
I heard that they're going to start using ads now on certain.
No, but do you think they would put more films onto physical media? I mean,
That'd be nice.
Yeah,
why not? All they got to do
someone.
is lease it to somebody else to make it. I mean, it's
Well, I mean, a lot of their stuff does come out because a lot of their stuff is made by other companies that then put it out. I don't know if they get a cut of the DVD and Blu-ray sales. I know they work a lot with like Sony and stuff, who seems to be the last major studio that doesn't have their own streaming platform. So they are kind of just they still sell their stuff to like Netflix and whomever. And I know a lot of their TV series come out on Blu-ray, but not so much the movies. And it's always
not at all.
bothersome for a lot of people. I mean,
it just seems like I know they want to like attract as many consumers as possible to stream and sign up for their various plans, but surely they could license 100 titles a year, well maybe 50. They could get some good income by doing it in various territories.
Yeah, I do wonder that if they have enough good movies that they've made,
Maybe. Yeah,
that I don't know that they could even get anybody that wants to buy a lot of their movies that they've actually made.
for distribution, I mean, it would depend. Like, it would really depend. I think they're more acclaimed stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Would sell. Obviously, we just talked about Scorsese, The Irishman.
Yeah.
Criterion,
Which they've already done. Yeah,
which they've already done. I don't know what they're going to do for the Fincher work that they've been working on. His most recent film, I don't think has gotten a physical media release yet.
And then there's the Buster Scruggs. The Coen
Buster
brothers.
Scruggs is one of a big outlier from the Coen brothers for the last few years. I don't even know if they're necessarily releasing the bigger stuff that they've been doing, the bigger action films, which they're paying absurd amounts of money to create. And I don't know where the budget is going because a lot of the films don't look like they cost $100 to $200 million to make. I don't know.
It's to get the star power in.
It's got to be the salaries.
You wouldn't be buying the Ranger Adam Sandler films on 4K then.
The Adam Sandler box set from
Yeah,
Criterion,
thank
please.
goodness.
Yeah.
Or Red Notice. I mean, I don't know where the money went into that movie. This was some of the worst CGI for a big budget film, I think, in the last couple of years was in that movie. But yeah, I agree with you. I think they could tap into that revenue stream, and they just seem to be hesitant of it. And I mean, I know their whole thing is they basically spend so much more than they make, and I don't know if you can sustain that for so long. And I think they're seeing the issues with it now. In the last 2 years, they've upped the pricing, I think, twice.
Yeah.
And it's probably going to keep going up.
Well, the other problem is everybody else got a streaming service, so they took all their movies back.
Yeah, they took all the all the stuff off of there. So now they really need to invest in other ways to make people buy and watch, because people can't sign up to every streaming platform. They got to choose.
Like we've talked about before, it needs to be more about quality control.
Yeah.
They need to start quality controlling themselves and actually spending their money and trying to
Wisely.
invest in something that actually might get people's eyes on the TV, clicking on stuff, because it just seems like they're just filling gaps. They're just filling out the week, so they make sure they have 20 releases this week. It's like.
However,
stop making all these random shit.
With things like that, I'm all for it in the sense because that is where B movies and direct-to-video films thrive.
Very true. Very
You're
true.
right in that sense, definitely.
There is, if you look on Prime, the wealth of B movies, direct-to-video movies that have been made in the last 18 months that are there filling their schedules purely for content. And I do think that, that whole supply and demand ethos is the reason that we have those sort of quote-unquote cult movies now and stuff. Yeah. So I think in a few years there's every chance that things that have gone, that some crazy indie fella has made for like 10k and has sold to Prime as a little 80-minute slot thriller with a daft title like Cannibal Dwarf or something like that. That will be the next, hopefully what the next generation of B-movie and direct-to-video critics will be championing and talking about and stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely. Sorry, just going to say, just to look at Tubi, for example. I mean, that service is pulling in $700 million in revenue this year.
Oh, yeah.
This year alone, it's going to hit that number, which is insane. And now they're making their own content. They're making their own original movies. I saw one the other night, which was the new Asylum film, which, granted, it's not for everyone. I think it's called Titanic 666.
Asylum's been doing those Titanic quote-unquote sequels for a very long time.
Yeah. But, even so, this is where the interesting stuff is often appearing. So it's going to be an interesting few years, sure.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is primarily a physical media podcast, and we're always promoting physical media. But to be open as transparent with the audience as well, without streaming services like we've been mentioning, it would be really tough to see a lot of these movies, and especially a lot of the more the stuff that you guys cover, and a lot of the stuff put out by Vinegar Syndrome and Severin, and et cetera, because a lot of those movies are not available in physical media form, and if they are, they're either out of print, or they're really tough to get, or they're in just general poor quality, aesthetically. So it's just like, we couldn't really do the podcast without streaming in general.
Yeah. No, and I think you got to highlight the importance of dovetailing it. Physical media is always going to be king. That's always the most important thing to actually own a film. But I think it's allowed that you can dovetail and you can include.
Yeah, you can go to
degree.
streaming, but you need a healthy supply of discs yourself, I think, because there will come a time where just as people who got rid of all their videos and then got rid of all their DVDs, they always come back to physical media. Always, because eventually, a friend of mine who I work with, she got rid of all her DVD collection, signed up to Netflix, signed up to Prime, and wanted to show her boyfriend her favourite film, A Room for Romeo Brass. You ever seen it? Excellent movie. Absolute classic of British cinema. And she wanted to show him that, and could she hell find it on any streaming service? And she'd got rid of her DVDs like 2 or 3 years before, and she regrets it. And now, that DVD, she said it was going to cost her a fortune to buy it again on eBay or Amazon. Yep. And it's like, that's why, keep them. Keep them. Unless you've got a replacement copy of it, keep them.
Almost, and I hate to say this because I don't want to promote pirating or anything like that, but it's like, it almost sounds like, I was going to also say not only Tubi, but like if you go through Vudu's catalog, like Vudu's got such a damn catalog of stuff that I've never heard of. Like I watched Snake Outta Compton. Snake Outta Compton's an amazing movie. It's like a sequel to Snakes on a Plane, where a snake falls from the plane and then it infects some guy and then he starts slowly turning into us. It's amazing. But it sounds like there is a job out there for somebody that needs to, all these like straight to streaming services, if they don't ever get physical releases, they're never going to have a home. If the streaming services get, so somebody needs to start pirating these movies now.
I mean,
there's thousands of them.
I wouldn't recommend it, but I know what you're saying.
It's proportion in it, Dave, who are making all those. They're the ones behind things like, is it Prototype and like, those the next wave of cheap horror movies that are sort of popping up on Prime and things like that, and they do a really, really good job. Like the fact that they're working, there's like 2 of them who make them, and they're working for like peanuts. Absolute cherry bobs is what their budget is, right? But a lot of them now, they're not even getting the nominal £5 budget priced DVD release. They're going straight onto Amazon Prime, and come the time Prime purge them, where do these films go? Where is your catalogue? As a you're churning them out for content, fair enough, but you are still an artist, regardless of the fact that you are motivated by money. You are still producing something that adds to the tapestry of cinema as an art form. Where are people going to be able to find your work and chronicle your work once it's disappeared?
Yeah,
it's just
exactly.
It blows my mind. So that's why
nobody. It's because everything's business oriented. They're not thinking about. They're not thinking as much as we're trying. This is why the boutique labels are so important, because they're really thinking about the future. And people making movies now don't seem to be thinking too far ahead. They're thinking of. The next.
It's insane though, because if you think back to the dawn of cinema when sound came in and they started junking all the silent movies, and now 100 years later, people are like, God, I wish we could see this film. I wish we could see that. You think people would learn and be like, no, this is all art. We need to keep documents of it. We need to keep a form of it so people can see this years from now. It's all part of our cultural history.
Yeah, it's almost like physical media is like, preserve. It's like seeds. They're like seeds. You got to keep them out there in the best form possible, so that if for some reason, there's no way to find like a negative or enter positive to rescan it again. Well, at least it's out there. The discs are out there, and hopefully it keeps spreading around. And they got to keep growing. You got to keep throwing them out there. And if you eliminate physical media, eventually it's gonna disappear. They're gonna go extinct. The movie's gonna go extinct. I mean, it needs copies.
Speaking of physical media, I guess we'll jump back into this.
What? We were talking about movies?
We were talking about movies there for a little while.
Movies,
we were talking about Okja, talking about Netflix, talking about, I guess, Bong Joon-ho. And this was a film that came out a few years ago. When did this come out, Stephen? 2017. Okay.
Yeah.
And this is the movie that's dealing with environmentalism, dealing with animal cruelty and all of that stuff. It was a film that some people don't like. Some people thought maybe a little too preachy, too specific in its message and whatnot. I really liked it, Stephen. Great cast. Tilda Swinton, Paul Dano, Stephen Yeun, Jake Gyllenhaal being wild and crazy as he is kind of being these days. And, it's about, at the core of this movie feels like a live-action Hayao Miyazaki film for the most part, dealing with a lot of those themes, about this, I think it's about a young girl and her pet whose name is Okja, and apparently, this species of animal is being, is kind of hunted and used for like food and stuff, and it's all about anti the food industry and their horrific practices, which there are tons and tons of documentaries and books and studies that they've shown where our food industry is pretty terrible, at least here in the United States. And even with regulations and all that kind of stuff, you always hear horror stories and whatnot, and people do remain completely oblivious to that type of stuff. But Stephen, do you remember seeing this movie? What was your opinion on it? I don't think we ever talked about it.
I don't. Look, I haven't seen it.
Since
I haven't
then.
seen it
I don't
since
think I've seen
it
it
came out.
since it came out. No.
Yeah, I haven't seen it since it came out, so I can't really give you like a nice opinion about how I feel about it today. But I don't remember loving it when it came out. I don't know if it was because of preachiness or whatever. I don't know. I do remember, because I am a fan of Jake Gyllenhaal, thinking that his performance in the movie was maybe a little bit over the top, not referencing a Sylvester Stallone movie.
Oh, you got the reference. Good.
Yeah. But it's.
I appreciated that. I like that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I'm a big fan of Over the Top. I think
Fall.
Over the Top is one of the best movies of that time period.
It's the only legitimate movie about arm wrestling you'll ever make.
It's legitimate. It's a legitimate movie. It's a canon film, so it's but it's I'm sure. Look, I would like to revisit it. I definitely want to revisit it. I probably will not do that by buying this outright. I
don't think this will be like a day one buy for me or anything like I'll pick up at a sale. But I'll eventually get it because
you're a completist and you want all of Bong Joon-ho's movies. That's exactly it.
There you go. You kind of hit it on the nail there. You got it. You got to it before I could.
Any thoughts on this, guys?
Yeah.
No.
Okay. Oh, well, that was good.
All right,
Let's
sounds
move
good.
on then.
We are getting some new features on there because it's a brand new release, so that's nice. 4K and a Blu-ray release as well. Steven, where do you want to move now? I'll move on to David Lean's Summertime.
I watched it.
Oh, you watched it? Great.
Yeah.
Because I'm a gigantic Katharine Hepburn fan, and so I've been wanting this in my collection for years, but it's only been available on DVD, and it's an older, DVD from Criterion. I don't even think it was in the right aspect ratio. It was, it wasn't 1:37 to 1, so it was. But
of course it was. It was Criterion. They wouldn't mess that up.
I know they wouldn't mess that. I think that it was streaming in the wrong aspect ratio or something.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. Either way, it's a David Lean film. That's not obviously one of his epics. It's a 100-minute long film. It's a drama, a romance. It's set in Venice, I believe, if memory serves. It's in Technicolor. It's Katharine Hepburn. It's hitting all the check marks for me as a classic movie fan.
Yeah, watching it for the first time, it kind of felt. I felt like it was kind of almost like a other side of the coin version of Roman Holiday.
Ooh, okay.
Where that's a romance and this is a romance, but the romance is kind of like doomed to fail. In Summertime. I don't want to.
I would say it's very much kind of like what he was doing in Brief Encounter.
Yeah.
But
exactly. Yeah, that's a better example. And Katharine Hepburn in this film, is just so amazing. Like she goes to kind of vacation out here. I think they're in Rome, if I'm remembering. In this, in Summertime, they're in Rome.
I thought
or is it Venice?
It's Venice.
Okay,
yeah.
I think Rome. They're in Rome in Roman Holiday, obviously.
Yes,
so it's in the title. Yeah. So that's where I got confused. But the Summertime, she's there for vacationing, and it's like you can tell she sees all these people around her with significant others, and she's all alone and wanting to share the moments with other people. And then she meets this guy in a shop. There's a shop, and finds out he's married, and then it's like it becomes a whole thing of but it's kind of heartbreaking and lovely at the same time. So yeah, I really enjoyed it.
So let's ask our guests if they've seen or heard of the movie.
It's only an hour 40 minutes, guys. Come on.
Yeah.
Is it? Oh wow!
No,
I like David Lean. In fairness, I haven't actually
Yeah.
seen this one, but I do think A Brief Encounter, obviously, excellent, great
great,
expectations. Lawrence of Arabia, of course. I think anyone, my age who hasn't ever sat and watched Dr. Zhivago on TV one Sunday afternoon with their nana, you haven't lived. And he's got a lot of even like. Sorry, Dave.
I've got Summertime to come full circle. I got it via Second Sight. They released it on DVD a couple of years ago. But yeah, depending on what the extras are on this, might be worth the upgrade.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to
Yeah,
think
I don't know.
how
I don't
many...
know if there is. It does have at least one new feature. I see.
Yeah, it has one new feature. I mean, originally it's Spine number 22. So this, like I said, it was an early release, and this has been waiting forever for a re-release. It is getting a 4K restoration. So, yeah, for me, it's a no-brainer when it comes to upgrading and buying this. Like, this would be like a very, very high priority for me. A lot of, especially with this slate having more re-releases that already have pretty good additions. And, obviously Okja and Drive My Car are brand new, but Summertime, it's high priority for me. I've always liked David Lean's work. I was introduced to him, I think like a lot of people were, with his epics, with Lawrence of Arabia, Dr. Zhivago. So seeing a lot of his shorter films and seeing kind of a more compressed David Lean is fascinating to me because it's kind of like, reversed.
Yeah, I think the big three for me was Zhivago, Lawrence of Arabia, and the Bridge on the River Kwai. They were like,
oh yeah,
Yes.
they were, they are what I would call Sunday afternoon movies. That is like, where you just eat, you've had a nice roast dinner, you're starting to snooze a little bit on the settee. There's either a Western on or a David Lean epic. So that's what you watch. So I'll definitely investigate Summertime because I do genuinely. I really like David Lean. And I think that anyone would be stupid not to like at least one David Lean movie. There is literally, out of his catalogue, there is something for everyone. I wish I'd seen more of him. I'd say I've maybe seen like 70% of his stuff. So
well, that's pretty good.
What's the other one? I did GCSE English. What was it? Hobson's Choice. That's another good one. That's entertaining.
Okay, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah, that's a fun one. That's my dad's favourite movie, actually. So the man who introduced me to, RoboCop and The Terminator also likes a relatively gentle 50s British comedy. So, go figure.
That's how it should be. That's how it should be.
Yeah, that could actually use a Blu-ray upgrade too. Like starring the great Charles Laughton.
Yes, correct. Yeah.
I think I've seen Hobson's Choice. Yes, it is. Yeah, it is like it's a British comedy from the 50s. I've always seen that DVD lurking around, and I'm like, I can't buy it. I gotta wait. Be patient. But moving on from there, Stephen.
Lastly,
I think the last one we have here is Devil in a Blue Dress with the amazing cover art here, just incredible. And this is a film I think both you and I are rather familiar with because I think we've seen it.
Yeah, we watched it. I watched it and prepare for when we talked about the Indicator release, and I do own it. I do own that Indicator release. I don't know that I will be investing in this, but yeah, I remember really enjoying it. Denzel. He's always magnetic. I always really enjoy watching a Denzel film, and Carl Franklin's a filmmaker I'm starting to get more into. I think the other film I watched of his that I think is getting a release soon is One False Move.
What a movie! Yeah, what a movie that is.
Yeah. So I'm really starting to slowly get more into Carl Franklin, and he's got a way about his films that I'm really enjoying, and of course there's other I think Don Cheadle's in the film too. Yes. And yeah, I mean I enjoyed it. It's got kind of a film noir style to it as well.
Oh yeah, it has that very neo it's interesting. It's a kind of a 90s neo noir, but it's set back, I believe, during the noir era, like the classic noir era.
Yeah, I think it's set in the 40s. Yeah.
Yeah, Denzel Washington is playing a detective, and he's trying to, figure out a mystery, and he, it's a very cool movie. Just a very cool movie. And this is Carl Franklin's intro into his premiere into the Criterion Collection. He's never had any other movie in there before. And yeah, this is a great cast. Denzel, Tom Sizemore, Don Cheadle, Jennifer Beals. I saw this movie a few years ago, and I always wanted to get it. I don't think I ever did. So I got to do a little comparison between this and the Indicator release when it comes to special features, because the one thing we've learned about Indicator is the features there are unique to anyone else. Like, no one's putting out as many features on their release as them, consistently at least. Arrow does a pretty massive job putting special features on, but it seems like every release from Indicator is chock full of like stuff you wouldn't think to ever be unearthed, but it's there. But this is getting like I said, a 4K UHD release. It's a new 4K digital restoration approved by Carl Franklin. I'm wondering if it's the same 4K restoration they used for that Blu-ray. I have to assume it is.
Yeah,
I got to assume. Yeah. Like I said, it's getting two new special features. One's a conversation with the director and Don Cheadle, and the other one's a conversation with the author of the novel and other stuff like that. Yeah, I'm liking it, but I don't know if I'm going to buy it right away until I do some investigative work.
Yeah, just like the characters in the movie.
Ironically so. Ironically so.
So
I'm going to be my own sleuth.
Yeah, so anything about these movies, guys?
No. I've got a great affection for neo-noir. A lot of the stuff we've covered in Schlock and Awe has fallen into that bracket.
Yeah.
We had a great season on the director J.S. Cardone recently on the Schlock Pit, who made some great neo-noirs throughout the 90s, like Black Day, Blue Night, which is an awesome film from 95 with J.T. Walsh that you should really track down if you can.
Okay.
So neo-noir is a real passion, and probably Devil in a Blue Dress is the top of that gambit from the era. I don't think there's much that tops it. It's a brilliant. I've got the Indicator release, and as you say, I echo what you say. It is an awesome addition to that movie with some amazing extras.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of. I mean, it's technically, I guess, a neo-noir, but L.A. Confidential has always been a favorite of mine.
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely in that time. But it's worth looking into. And of course, it is a 4K if that's something you care about. So it might have a little bit sharper image, and it is HDR as well. But I mean, it's a fine slate. There's a fine slate from both Imprint and Criterion, and So, anything else, Andrew?
I think that's all of the releases from Criterion, right? Yes,
that's it. Well, guys, thank you for joining us. That was amazing time. We went everywhere. We
took a journey.
It was a
journey through cinema.
What I liked about this episode was that we would be doing even past the interview process. We would have moments during the slate that we would just start going off in another direction and talk about something, and I love that.
We're terrible gobshites. I can only apologise. We love going off on it. Like, it's, we have to really rein ourselves in on commentaries and stuff.
I mean, if people care a lot about the structure of something, then sure. Then if it upsets some of the people that expected the slates to be very thoroughly talked through and then off to the next one, I'm sorry, guys, if we didn't do that slate, more to plan. But I think we had some really interesting conversations about different things, whether it be about collecting or about particular director or something that we're part of these tangents, and I wouldn't take it back. So thank you guys for coming on, and would love you to come back again and do it all over again. And maybe we'll get 88. We'll do it in an 88 film slate because
they did actually. Yeah, 88 dropped their slate this morning, but we didn't have time to really discuss it or talk about it. Or else this show would probably be at least another hour.
For the record, we had no idea they were announcing stuff today, so that proves how far in the loop we are.
Yeah, it's an odd day. A Sunday morning? Or at least...
The reason was it just dropped onto Amazon. So they haven't announced it officially. It's suddenly appeared on Amazon, so it's kind of rained on their forthcoming.
It must have leaked before
it's that whoever it is who runs that... He's like a bloodhound, isn't he? Him who runs Dawn of the Disc. God bless him. I have no problem with the fella. Me, I subscribe to all his social medias and stuff. I love seeing what's coming up. But I know that he really rankles a few people dropping the announcements early.
Well,
and stuff.
the thing is, from what I understand, it's not like he's scooping people. He's just somebody else that's leaked it. He finds it and then he just posts it. I mean, that's not his fault.
I admire the man. He spends a good 12 hours a day refreshing Amazon pages, so that's more patience than I have. And I use him as a resource. I love seeing what's coming up. I like to know.
We do too.
So I think he's doing the Lord's work in his own way, and it makes it funnier when people get annoyed by him, as if Blu-ray announcements are some sort of sacrosanct thing. It's like, ultimately, come on, guys, we're just talking about movies. Lighten up. He's not revealing, the secrets of the fucking Kremlin or anything like that.
And people are still gonna buy them anyway, regardless of if you release them today, tomorrow, next week.
Or you could just do the really difficult thing. Unfollow him. You could
just, God forbid you have
if you care that much. Yeah. But thanks, guys.
No, thank you.
And you guys have been a pleasure, and you guys have been shouting our stuff out. We appreciate you doing that for us. Well, like I said, we'll do this again. So, where's the best place for people to reach out to you?
Via our bank accounts.
Theschlockpit.com, theschlockpit.com, and that's got everything that we do. That's sort of our hub from where you can trace our various activities.
Fantastic. And look out for the book. The new book's coming out. Yeah. So that's I can't wait to get. I want to be sent one of them copies of that book.
Yeah, signed
copies.
Graffiti.
Please. But Andrew, where can you be found?
You can find me on Twitter at Capzilla06, as well as our YouTube channel, Chasing Labels.
And you can find me on Facebook, Stephen Billings. You can also find me at the other Chasing Labels pages, whether it be our Instagram, our Twitter, and you can even follow me on my Letterboxd at Chasing Labels. You can find the audio for the podcast on Podbean, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, and other places. Thanks again for listening, and hey, keep on watching them movies.
I know I will.
I will, as long as they're under 90 minutes.